this is the code has a table in it that identifies how efficient a home needs to be, and it's based on its square footage. That square footage does include the basement, so keep that in mind, whether it's finished or unfinished. So it's one of those things to kind of have in the back of your mind. Right now, currently, our HERS score is on a scale of 1 to 100, with 100 being the least energy efficient and 1 being the most energy efficient. Our code starts at 70 for homes up to 3,000 and then drops straight down to 50 for homes from 3,001 square footage to 5,000. So that's a big drop of 20 points. Same goes for, I should have a pointer. If you have a home over 5,000 feet, that's another 25 points in her score. And what staff is proposing is a graduated step rather than a big step. And the graduated is sort of the bottom, what we're looking at, starting at 2,500, where it shifts from 70 to 60, and then gradually goes down slowly. And Kyle Brown, who's with Populous, we've got a table that we can show you a little bit better through that's in his presentation. But the adjustment lowers the burden of the costs for construction for both the homeowner as well as the home builder, depending on whether it's a refinish or finishing a basement or a new build. So how do we compare to other communities? Boulder County, as you might expect, is sufficiently more stringent than we are currently, and our proposal is very similar to the city of Boulder. Louisville, Lafayette, and Broomfield are currently operating under older codes. If you recall, we adopted the 2012 codes, which are what make ours slightly more stringent. All three of those communities are going to be switching to the same code that we're at now. So that would put us in direct competition, not competition, but relationship with them would be comparable to what they would be proposing as well.
They'd be switching to what we currently are or what we're proposing tonight? What
we currently are, with the 70 base versus 85, HERS score. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to introduce to you Kyle Brown, who's with Populous, and he will give you a much better, more articulate HERS 101 than either I or Ernie could do for you. And it's on home modeling based on orientation of the sun, size and layout of the home, insulation and cladding, and the efficiency of the heating and cooling system, which leads to the HERS score. So he'll take you through that a little bit better. So actually I've learned a lot about it, and it's pretty interesting. So
great.
I can just arrow down.
Okay, great, thanks. A couple of handouts here since we weren't able to get them into the slides. I had to be distributed.
Chief Geek.
That's David's title. So I'm filling in for David Niger. David's the owner of Populous. He is in California on a business trip. Yeah. Great. And I just got married this weekend, so he kind of threw me a little bit like he's threw me to the wolves. But I've been doing
congratulations.
Yeah.
So this is your honeymoon?
Yeah.
My honeymoon.
We're honored to have you on your honeymoon.
The flight back from Asheville and the time I spent in Asheville. So yeah, I got married in North Carolina. So, but I've been doing this work just as long as David has. Although I hadn't seen this presentation before this morning. I would say I'm on. We are equals in terms of building science knowledge. The first sheet that I actually gave you was a slide called Your Presenter. I like to give this. I like to give a sheet like this out, or include a slide like this in the presentations when I give presentations to folks, just so you know what my background is. I'm currently the residential director at Populous. What I do there is exactly what I'm going to talk to you about tonight. I sit in front of a computer and make energy models, and I visit sites, and I test duct systems and test pressure in homes, and create HERS ratings for folks. And I've been doing that for about 6 years now. I also rate for programs like LEED for Homes, the USUBC's LEED for Homes, the Energy Star program, and the National Association of Home Builders Green program. And I've been doing those certifications for about 5 years as well. And at one point, not currently, I was actually a trainer for HERS raters. So I trained new HERS raters. I told them, essentially I taught them everything they needed to know, Building Science 101 through the advanced HERS stuff. So that's what you got with me. The other sheet I passed out is some cost data. We'll get to that in just a second. But before we do, I'm going to run through these slides. So this slide here basically represents the nature of the challenge. These statistics here are provided by the United States Green Building Council. Some folks think that or believe that CO2 emissions are a problem. Buildings emit a lot of CO2. They're responsible for a lot of CO2 emissions. Other folks may not agree with the CO2 problem. Either way, buildings emit a lot of CO2, and the buildings that are built today are going to be around for a long time. So if it is a problem, we're going to be dealing with it for a long time. And what we do to deal with that is we make folks follow building codes. We say you can't just build what you want. You have to build buildings to certain standards, and one of those standards is an energy code. So here's what we all think of generally, or if you're into this kind of stuff, as a building code. It's your standard prescriptive building code. What it says is that in certain climate zones, you have to do certain things to your building to get it to pass code. So the yellow highlighted line there is the climate zone 5, our climate zone prescriptive requirements. So we have to have R38 in our ceilings. We have to have R19 in our walls at least. We have to have R30 in our subfloor. It's basically just a checklist of things that you have to do on every building to get it to pass code.
In theory, of course, not necessarily in practice, though.
Yeah.
That's how I've seen it go.
Right. Yeah. Well, here's another way to look at the code, though. This here is a performance-based code. Basically, you end up with the same. And this is actually Boulder County's code. You end up with the same result, right? You can, depending on how you set these targets up. You end up with the same result, which is a target, an energy efficiency target, but there is no guidance on how you have to get there. You're not, the builders aren't, the homeowners are not, the architects are not being told exactly what they have to do to get to it. The code officials say, we don't care how you get there, as long as your building's built safe. Just hit these targets overall, and we're okay with that. You pass. So here's a breakdown of a couple of different codes. One is the City of Boulder code, is I think in blue there. The green line is the Boulder County code.
Boulder is 35 for everything? Tell me what Boulder is.
Okay, so let's start with the City of Boulder, which is the blue line.
Okay.
If you build a house that is less than 3,000 square feet, your HERS index target is 70.
Okay.
Right? So that's
yeah,
and I'll get to this
now
in a
I
second,
see.
but that's a house that's roughly 30% more efficient than code. And then it steps down from there. As the house gets bigger, the targets get lower. But
And explain that logic to me. What is the value of having a bigger house that's more efficient? So I'm just saying, if we want to encourage a certain level of efficiency, why don't we do it uniformly across all house sizes?
Okay, so the HERS index is relative to the house size. So if a 5,000 square foot house, the HERS index of a 5,000 square foot house, I'll get to this in a second. I think
Okay.
it'll be more clear.
Just do it.
I'll just give you the
don't have to
overall
answer
logic.
it now then.
The overall logic is we want the entire stock of housing to consume this much energy, right? Smaller houses might consume that bigger houses are probably going to consume more, but the target gets more stringent for bigger houses because you cap the energy consumption here, and as
I
those
gotcha.
houses get bigger, right, you have to shave more off to stay there. Right, so. And then the green line, Boulder County's code is more of a slope line. And I think the reason for this conversation here is that, as you can see, the target for a 3,000 square foot house versus a 5,000 square foot house is the same. But once your house is 5,001 square feet, it's an entirely different ballgame, right? So, and we'll get to this more in just a second, but the slope line, it just kind of evens the playing field even more than the stepped code. So, on the left, so to use an automobile analogy, on the left here is a set of directions, and let's just pretend that you're trying to get somewhere and you just printed this out on a piece of paper before you left. We'll call that the prescriptive code. The problem with that is that if you hit a roadblock or you get stuck in traffic, you have no other way to go, right? Versus, you're kind of lost at that point. You're stuck. You can't move on. Versus the GPS there on the right, it's dynamic. So if you run into a roadblock or traffic, you can navigate your way around it. And this is kind of like the difference between the prescriptive code as we know it now and the performance-based code. You still get to the same place, but you have a lot more flexibility with the performance-based code. To use another automobile analogy, the HERS index, or the way we measure the energy efficiency of homes, is kind of like a miles per gallon sticker, right? So we say, how do we know? I guess, how do we know if this house here is green or efficient, right? Or if it's old and drafty and uses a lot of energy? We don't. It kind of looks like an older, dated house. And just looking at it at first glance, you might think, well, it kind of looks like it might use more energy than a more modern-looking home. But then if you look a little bit closer, I see some stickers on the windows there. So maybe they've done some improvements. Those look like new windows to me that haven't had the stickers removed yet. The HERS index, or the miles per gallon rating, would tell us how efficient this home is. So does it use a lot of energy, or does it use a little bit of energy? And again, the HERS index is kind of like a golf score. The lower it is, the better. And I think just to skip ahead a little bit here, a house with a HERS index of 100 is a standard code-built home, right? A house with a HERS index of 0 would be a net zero home, right? So if your actual HERS index falls anywhere between 100 and 0, you're doing all right. You're at least better than code, or equal to code. If it's higher than 100, then you might have a problem. You have a less efficient house than it could be. So, how is the HERS index actually calculated? What we do is we build a computer energy model of every home that we rate, right? And we plug all of the information about the energy efficiency features into the model. And here is a model that we created of an actual house, and this home is a real home in Denver. So, what the energy modeling software does that we use is it actually creates two homes, right? We build the home that's built in the model, right? So we kind of digitally recreate the house that's built. And then it makes it an identical copy of that house. And it populates that home with just code specifications, right? Nothing better than code. And of course, the house that we put into the model will use the specifications that the home is actually built with, whether those are better or worse than code. And the difference in energy consumption between those two homes is the HERS index, right? And I'll explain that here. So let's just look at this slide here for a second. The first thing that jumps out to me is that the home on the left here, or the reference home or the code home, has a window to floor area of 18%. The actual house has a couple more windows than that. It has a window to floor area ratio of 24%. So,
And
what we-
windows are bad, is that what you're saying?
yeah, so the significance there is that windows, they're generally giving U values, but those translate into R values. The R value of a decent window is about R3. Code says that at minimum we have to have an R19, and when you're talking about R value, higher is better. Code says at a minimum we have to have R19 in our wall. So the more windows we have, or the more or less efficient square footage of fenestration we have, the more energy, of course, that home's going to use. So right off the bat, we know that our actual home is actually going to use a little bit more energy in the category of windows than the code-built home. But the other things to note here, though, are that it has better wall insulation, better ceiling insulation, a much more efficient furnace, solar hot water heater, and 2 kW PV system. Right? So although we did a little bit worse in the code home on windows, we far exceeded the requirements in the other categories. And here's how it ended up. The code-built home will end up using, we've got the home used natural gas and electricity. Natural gas is measured in therms, so we can translate that into kilowatt hours. The code-built home will consume over the course of a year 44,171 kilowatt hours. The actual home will only consume 17,227 kilowatt hours. So the math on that there is at the bottom. The actual house is only going to use 39% of the energy that the code-built home will use. So it has a HERS index of 39.
What would the reference house have? What's its HERS score if you had built to that exact code?
100.
100. Okay, thank you.
And that's for a 2009 code, is that right, or this is not?
Okay, so this is an interesting thing about the HERS index. It's actually based on the 2006 code.
6.
Yeah, and that hasn't changed, and it probably will not change because so many homes have been built with. So what's happening is what's now happening in this area and in Boulder. Folks who are already using the performance-based code are just dropping that number because the HERS index is not moving with the code. And I'm just going to run through this section really quickly, but what I'm trying to convey in this section is that the modeling software is very sophisticated. It considers a lot of stuff. So when we're modeling a home, we're looking at the location, orientation, passive solar gains, passive solar shading, roof and wall color, so darker homes versus lighter homes absorb and reflect more energy, and that makes a difference based on the climate you're in and the kind of sunlight the home sees. We're looking at insulation R values. We're looking at not just the R value of the rated R value of the insulation as it comes from the factory, but the actual installed R value. So was it installed well? Was it installed poorly? We're looking at things like framing efficiency. So generally you'd see more framing in a wall like this. You'd see trimmers, jack studs. Those are not in this model, or those are not in this actual house here. So we left that out of the model. It makes the home slightly more efficient because you have less wood, which is not a very good insulator, and more insulation in the cavities. And we look at, let's see here, windows. We're looking at the window U value, which is its thermal conductance. We're looking at the solar heat gain coefficient, which is how much solar radiation it reflects, which is a good thing in the summertime, reflecting that insulation, but it's actually not a good thing in the wintertime. You want more insulation to come through the windows, and that makes a difference in the model. We're looking at adjacent shading, so are there trees or other buildings nearby? We are looking at whole house infiltration, so how much air moves through the house. Is it a drafty house, or is it well sealed? And we don't just make assumptions on stuff like that. We actually go out to the building and we test it with equipment. So at the end of the project, we'll go out with the blower door unit. I think, here we go, blower door unit. We'll set this thing up and we'll measure how much air is moving through the house under natural conditions. We also test the ductwork. I don't think this is a very intuitive photo, but that's an air handler that's located on the top of a roof. And what we're doing there is we're pressurizing the duct, and we're in order to tell how much duct leakage there is. If your ducts are located outside of the thermal and air barrier envelope of the house and they're leaking, supply ducts are blowing conditioned air into the attic, that's a lot of energy that's being wasted. So we determine where and how much air is leaking out of the ductwork, and that actual number gets plugged into the energy model. We also look at the equipment, the furnace, how big is it, what type of fuel does it use, where is it located, inside conditioned space, outside conditioned space, and then what's the efficiency rating on it. We look at heat pump and air conditioner efficiency, and we look at the water heater, of course, to determine how big it is, how well insulated the tank is, etc. A couple of new things that have popped up in code. One here is mechanical ventilation. Homes are being built tight enough that we've reached the point where we need to actually ventilate the homes with fresh air, which sounds kind of counterintuitive. Why would you build a home so tight that you need to mechanically introduce air? But it's not. It's a good thing. The thing about ventilation is that you want to be able to. You don't want air just leaking in anywhere. You want to be able to control where it comes from and how much is going into the home, because you can't always count on natural ventilation to provide enough fresh air in the home. And of course, a leakier house, you're going to end up with more natural ventilation just naturally, I guess, but that you're also losing energy there too. So this is called, this device here is called an HRV, or a heat recovery ventilator. And what it does is it exhausts stale air from the home at the same time that it supplies fresh air, and that air doesn't mix, but it meets in a heat exchanger. So it's capturing energy, it's capturing heat from the exhaust air and transferring that to the fresh ventilation air in a heat exchanger. So we'll put information on the HRV or ERV in the model as well. We look at the appliances, we look at the lighting, how much CFL or LED lighting is in the home, etc. We even look at things like thermal mass. The more mass you have in the home, concrete, stone, that's directly lit by the sun during the wintertime, the more mass there is, the more efficient your home is going to be. So it will capture and store energy during the day, release it slowly at night, and your furnace will kick on less. And finally, we look at on-site energy generation, wind, solar thermal, solar PV, etc. So the idea of performance-based codes is not new. The HERS index was actually first used, I believe, once I find my page of notes here, in 1995. So it's been used for 1995, so more than a decade now. The HERS index is used by the EPA's Energy Star program. Let's see here, the IRS 2005 federal tax credit is based on HERS index results. The United States Green Building Council uses it for its League for Homes program. The NHB uses it for its green building program, Environments for Living, uses it, Earth Advantage. And the idea of using the HERS index as a route or an option for code compliance is not new either. Of course, City of Boulder, Boulder County, this list should also include Superior, Broomfield, Denver, Longmont, Santa Fe, New Mexico, a couple of cities in New Mexico, New York. In fact, just 3 days ago, 121 municipalities in Massachusetts just adopt a performance-based building code based on the HERS index, including the city of Boston. So it's been around for a while. It's a sophisticated program. It's been tested, and it's accepted in the building community. And it's actually the idea of a performance-based program or code has been accepted since 2003. The performance-based option was built into the IECC since 2003. So hers has been used by other programs, had been used for other programs for almost 10 years before that, but here recently, the 2000 IECC even recognizes the HERS index and other similar performance-based methods for compliance. And finally, what I'll say is that the final advantage of the HERS system, other than the fact that it gives the builders more options, is that it has a quality assurance mechanism built into it. So HERS raters such as myself are accredited by the Residential Energy Services Network, or ResNet. We've been trained. We attend continuing education events throughout the year, and our work is verified by other raters in the ResNet organization. So every year, 10% of all of the energy models that I create and 1% of the field inspections that I complete are verified by a member of the ResNet organization. And that is it.
Great, thanks. Questions from anybody?
So could you explain this chart a little bit, go in depth on that?
Okay, so now that we've got through what the HERS rating is, let's look at the chart here. And I think what I'll do is I'll back up so we can look at the graph. There we go. So what I've done here is I've taken.
Kyle, do you understand she's holding this one up?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Okay.
I saw that you, yeah.
Yep. I've taken 7 homes, varying from 3,000 square foot in size up to 6,000 square feet. So that's the very left column here. The second column is the HERS index required by your current code. Right. So from 3,001 square feet up to 4,999. The homes are required to achieve a HERS index of 50. As soon as we bump over the 5,000 square foot mark, that target is cut in half, right, and drops down to 25. The third column is how much PV we expect a new home to have to install to meet the current code. And we've only provided, again, there are hundreds of ways that you can meet these targets, and that's the entire point of the system, of the HERS compliance system. But what we find is that at a certain point, so once you increase the efficiency of the home down to the range of HERS 50 or 60, solar becomes the more cost-effective option for meeting the targets, right? Because you've already installed all of the CFL light bulbs that you can buy for $1 of at King Supers, and you've already done the others. You pick the low-hanging fruit, and at that point, solar becomes more cost-effective.
Quick question
Sure.
on that. So the proposed Superior Code, so any home, including basements, that's 4,000 square feet or more, is going to be required to have photovoltaic panels somewhere on the property?
Yeah, not required. Not required. So and again, in the current code, any home that's 3,000 to 6,000 square feet is probably going to end up with PV in the current code. In the proposed code, I would say that from 3,000 up to, from the 3,000 up to 3,500 square feet, you could probably get away without PV, but from there down, you're probably going to see PV being the more cost-effective option.
Right. Okay, so that goes back to your comment about it doesn't matter how you get there.
Exactly.
And this is the most cost-effective way of getting there.
Right.
Gotcha.
I mean, you could build the walls 15 inches thick and fill them full of close-cell foam, but close-cell foam is extremely expensive at that depth, and it's sort of the economy of scale kicks in, or the law of diminishing returns kicks in with that insulation. The benefit you get goes like that fast.
Right. Thank you.
So yeah, I guess why don't we just go ahead and move on to the new, the proposed code in general. So basically, and I'll focus on the cost here. From about 3,000, I guess from the up to about 3,500 square feet, it's actually going to be a little less expensive for folks to build code compliant homes, but the cost will increase slightly for the larger house. It's just due to the nature of the step. You're sort of cutting the line down the middle, and the stuff on the left benefits and the stuff on the right gets hit a little bit, but that's just how it goes when you're evening the playing field. Though the significance here is the very last column. What we've done is we've said, okay, just let's look at the row, the 4,999 square foot house. Let's look at that row. The new home, or under the new proposed code, we're saying that that house is going to need an additional 4.67 kW of solar to comply because of the new slope, and that's going to cost $16,000, right? But the significance here is that a 5,000 square foot, a new 5,000 square foot home is going to cost about $1 million to build, and that's pretty conservative. That's using a $200 per square foot budget estimate.
Are we including the land?
Well, I'm just talking the house.
Just the house?
Just the house.
We're not talking land, so this house could be anywhere in the United States or in the world or whatever.
Well, I'm saying in this, in this area, 200, actually really anywhere in the country, $200 a square foot is about as low as you go if you're going to build a decent house. And honestly here, that's a very conservative number. I routinely see houses that are more like 300 or 400 and even up to 600, or I've seen houses up to $1,000 a square foot.
So that the estimated cost for a 3,500 square foot home, which is about the average size of Rock Creek homes, would be $700,000. Is that
A new home, yes.
That seems high.
It does.
Well, but that's to build to this HERS score, correct?
That's just to build the house, period.
But that's $4,000 less than the previous requirement. Construction cost delta, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
I'm
I
sorry.
mean, there's not a big difference here, but
Yes.
your construction cost delta is $4,000 lower.
Okay, so
For the new
I
homes
think we're
than
getting
the
confused here.
current
Let's focus on one thing at a time. Now, let's just look at the estimated cost first, and then I'll talk about the construction cost delta.
And the only reason you have an estimated cost to build a house is just to calculate the final column, right?
Right, yeah, so just let's focus on that really very quickly. The estimated cost, $200 a square foot, is about, it's average. I mean, that's an average cost, and it seems shocking almost, really.
Yes.
But that's what these homes are being built for these days. And again, I've literally seen homes that with budgets of $1,000 a square foot, right? $1,000 a square foot. But $200 is a very good estimate, and I would even say it's a conservative estimate. Okay, so let's jump from there over to the construction cost delta. So this construction cost delta is what's going to happen to the cost of building that home due to the fact that you may roll out this new code. So what will happen to the construction cost of the home due to the new code? So you mentioned the 3,500 square foot home. It's actually going to cost them a little bit less.
Right.
Okay, but the 4,999 square foot home, it's going to cost them a fair amount more. The important information, though, is in the last column. So focusing on the 4,999 square foot house, the new code is going to increase their budget by less than 2%. Right? And again, the smaller homes, it's going to help their budget out a little bit.
So another question then about when you implement these improvements or the efficiencies, their average annual energy bills would be less by how much of a percentage?
I don't have that information in here. Yeah, the average. So yes, you're right. Their energy bill will drop if you install solar on a house. They'll see a benefit on their utility bills. So that would be an additional benefit to, for example, the 4,999 square foot house. they're going to have to pay 16 grand for solar, but their utility bills is going to be significantly lower because of the solar that they've added. So
It's gotta
that's
be.
just a gross cost there.
Yeah.
The net return.
What's the break-even point in years in order to make up that 16,000?
I couldn't tell you. I'd have to look at a specific house, and I'd have
Okay.
to look at specific numbers.
Well,
and it's
so-
based on utility costs and all kinds of different things. So
Doesn't that improvement burden, though, that column there, so that 4,999 square foot home, 1.63%,
Yes.
that's how much more it's going to cost
Yes.
based on the budget, but we have to assume that their
Yes.
energy costs are going to be reduced by more than 1.63%. I got to believe that.
Okay, so, but the 1.63% is relative to the total cost of building the house, not to their monthly bill.
Right.
So their bills
I get
will be
that.
reduced by a fair amount, maybe, so let's just throw a number out there, say 25%
Right.
or more. But that's we're looking at two different numbers there, so.
You've got to get to the actual $16,000 and
Exactly.
So can I ask
Yes.
the randomness question here? So, we picked 70 to start out at? Is that where we are below 2,500? Is that?
70, I'm sorry, where is this?
It's not on that one, but that's our base, right? The smallest
Yeah,
house is going to start.
well, if you go all the way up to
right?
70.
Okay, gotcha.
So we picked 70, and why did we pick a slope of 7 as opposed to a slope of 5? My guess is that's what Boulder County is. Is that based on anything?
That is a question that I cannot answer because I'm just the box
You're the-
checker.
yeah.
Who says, okay, this is what it is. That would be a better question for the building officials as far as the targets that were picked.
Because it seems like maybe it would make sense to follow the same slope that Boulder County has and just do the offset at the higher, start at a higher number. Or is there any science based?
What I don't like about Boulder County is they go
Right.
all the way down to 10, and that almost seems inhumane.
No, but I'm not saying necessarily
Yeah,
we even go
don't
down to
go
10.
all the way,
But why
but
is
have the
why is the
slope.
slope 7 and not 5
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
Boulder County is?
it's, you're exactly right. I mean, it can be whatever you feel most comfortable with. I mean, so we're starting at 70, and whatever, if the board feels like homes under 5,000 square feet should have X as a HERS.
I don't have any particular feeling one way or the other. I just didn't know if there was any science based upon this, or it was like 7 seems like a nice number.
Arbitrary.
Yeah.
And, how green, I guess you want to force your building.
Ernie, at one time, we had a table in one of these iterations that actually showed Broomfield, Louisville, whatnot, in a table of their HERS scores next to us. And where's that?
That was just a table where, well, it's kind of like on the graph.
Sorry, you gotta go up to the mic, so I can put you on.
Where is
Well, it's on the graph.
Broomfield? Where is Louisville?
Broomfield, Louisville, and Lafayette are all proposing to adopt the 2012 code between now and middle of 2013,
Which is what?
which means they will have a HERS score of 70 across the board.
It's what we
Across
have
the
right
board.
now,
Right.
right? Without the.
But across the board, for any size of home.
Right.
So in fact, we are much more rigorous than our contiguous neighbors. If they're across the board at 70 and our bigger homes go down to 25, it
East,
is,
they're less.
yeah.
West, there are more rigorous.
Right, Boulder County is more.
In fact, Boulder County, starting January, they're going to drop everything of theirs 10 points. straight
Yeah,
down.
but given the amount of residential development that happens
Boulder County.
in Boulder County versus the rest, I actually sort of throw them out. I don't think they should be the establisher.
No, I
If they build a house, it's a big one.
Right. So,
That includes unincorporated Boulder County, right? That if you build a house in unincorporated Boulder County, then you fall on that slope.
And the green one.
Yeah.
yeah. But my point, I think everybody got it, is that Boulder's low point is 10 percentage points higher than our low point at 35 versus 25. And you're saying our contiguous neighbors, so Broomfield, Lafayette, and Louisville all are at a static 70.
They will be, yeah.
Right. So I think that was the relevant takeaway from the previous conversation, whether or not we want to basically make it more expensive to build the larger houses here.
Right.
What's our message?
Yeah, what I understand from this presentation is that we aren't going to be building many of those larger houses here as our town center and
You know,
comp plans.
it's a good example is the house that just.
I was just going to throw that house out.
Right.
How big is that house going to be, or could be?
Yeah, that house, including the basement, is just under 6,000 square feet.
Right,
So for them.
Right now, they're going to have to meet her score of 25.
right. To rebuild, you have to meet the current building code, right?
Yes.
Okay. And in fact, there are a lot of houses in Rock Creek that are more than 5,001 square feet when you include basements.
So then the question for the
yeah.
board is, what do you feel, I mean, how energy efficient do you feel comfortable with requiring homeowners to build to? And this is a good example.
Can I ask one question? If you have a home that you want to rehab, and you gutted the inside, are you required to meet these HERS scores?
If you totally got it, yes.
And when you say totally, are we talking one room or the entire house?
No, the entire house.
So if you do one room, this doesn't apply?
No.
But if your house burns down, it does apply.
completely applies.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Okay.
Even if it didn't burn down and you decide you don't like the way it looks, you got
Scrape
the
it.
money, you're going to just go and tear out, you like the outside walls, tear out all the inside, and then you'll have to meet the codes.
So you make sure your insurance covers the rebuild costs to new code.
That's exactly right.
Well, once again, I think we all agree that energy efficiency is probably good. I mean, now we're just in the completely random, like, what's the right number? And I don't know what the right number is. I mean, my takeaway from this is that I'd start at 70, I'd go down to 35 like Boulder is, with the same slope that Boulder County has, and start there as a beginning point. But once again, I can't say there's any science to any of that. It's just...
So we've got to have them, go ahead, Deb.
So my takeaway here is that we're not competing with Boulder. If people buy a house in Boulder, they're not going to be coming here. We're competing with Louisville.
I live in Boulder, and I live here, so
Okay.
I think
Well-
we compete directly with them.
Yeah, we do. They sell
I
out.
think we
But we also
compete directly
compete
with
with
Louisville, Lafayette, and Erie.
Broomfield.
The important thing I think to note about this is that what the houses that are being I guess not penalized, I guess I don't want to use that word, but the houses that need to be more efficient are the larger houses, and those are the homes with the bigger budgets. And what I can say is that the 2,500 square foot cutoff, the reason that the line slopes there is because that was according to the Realtors Association. I don't know what their exact name is, but that's the most recent study that has been done says that that's the average home size being built in America now. So, as you move on, as you get bigger from there, the target drops. And again, it's all about capping the energy use and penalizing the bigger homes. And essentially what you're saying is we want you to use this much energy. If you build your home bigger, you have to make it more efficient so you stay at this level. And the other thing that works there is that the bigger homes have the bigger budgets. And they can afford to do those things like that.
Which actually brings more benefit.
One thing I would say, though, also I think that you would benefit from knowing this as well, is that the bigger homes, just by the nature of their budgets and what's being built, they're nicer homes than oftentimes than the smaller homes, right? So they're installing better appliances, they're installing better countertops, better flooring. They also install better windows. They also install better insulation.
Okay,
They're also the
can I
folks that install solar.
say one thing? So to address your issue, we don't want to be competing against Boulder. We want people to have an affordable house. And Boulder is not affordable, but we are affordable. And if we require a very difficult HERS score to achieve, then we're going to be putting ourselves in the category of Boulder. And that We're not in that category. We are with Louisville, Lafayette, and Erie. And so I feel we should be competing with them along the lines of what they're going to be doing on the HERS score.
Yeah, the other point is really, economically speaking, I think our challenge is when we go after a developer, when we have areas in which we want to have them develop to homes, Richmond 15, wherever it is, the developer has to make this decision. Do they want to come into our community to build for a whole host of factors, or do they want to go to our neighbors to build? So to me, it is a lot of art and sort of less science to figure out where you take your stand. I believe in energy efficiency, but I know that home I have, I just had you guys out, one of your coworkers at Populous, and I have outrageous utility bills, and I found out my house was quite efficient, and if I make it any more efficient, I have to put one of those air exchangers things in. I'm like, well, then how can I be paying all this money? Well, guess what? I'm shy on insulation where I need insulation. I mean, to me, yes, as a policy decision, as a board, we want to encourage energy efficiency, but I think somebody said those homes in Rock Creek that were built 10 or 15, 20 years ago, what was the requirement then, Ernie? 120 or?
Well, yeah, it could have been.
So we're already down to 70 at the highest, which is a substantial improvement, almost 50% improvement over where those old, my home was built. So we are making strides in energy efficiency. The thing is,
How far do you want to go?
where do we want to go? Yeah.
Can I throw out a wild card? And actually, I may have left out one of the most important pieces of information that I should have given you. I just remembered it's just a tiny little asterisk down on the chart that I gave you, which is what I forgot to tell you. There are programs available now for homeowners that allow them to lease solar PV systems as opposed to buying them. So essentially, as a homeowner, what you're doing, and the cost of the lease essentially works out to what they would otherwise be paying on their electric bill and utilities. So basically, the homeowner can say, all right, leasing company, put your panels on my roof. I'll pay you what I otherwise would have paid Xcel Energy for my electricity, and they get no money down, no additional cost solar, but that also gets factored into the HERS index. So they can meet these requirements by taking that route instead.
So just in terms of, we need to give staff some sort of direction. I mean, I think where we're at right now, basically charging more for these otherwise houses on the small end is probably not where we want to be. And I think that we want to migrate to some other format, and I don't know where that number should be, but I'd like to give them some sort of direction about how to proceed.
Well, I agree with you. At a minimum, we've got to bring the 25s up to the 35
That's very
boulder
reasonable.
rate. I can't see being more restrictive than Boulder is on that 35. It's whether or not, in my opinion, whether or not we even bring it up more, because our neighbors are 70.
And it could be as simple as our baseline is 70 for anything under 3,000 square feet and under, and then the next tier, if the board is comfortable, anything under 5,000 square feet is 60 or 55, and then based on those 2 points,
So-
you're sliding scale.
Not a very steep line.
Yeah, I don't care, because there's no science to any of this. It's just kind of where you think the right cutoff is. And
Right, yeah, exactly.
How did we ever end up with current Superior Code at 50 and 25? Oh, I guess it's 70, 50, and 25, if I'm reading that.
because of the
Is that the 2006 code, 6 IECC thing?
No, the 2006 IACC was just a HERS of 85. It was the green code that you adopted in 2008. The board, that set
2000.
those, yeah, the board adopted.
In what year?
Set those.
2008.
That set the 70, 50, and 25.
So, and then again, cost of energy is just going to go up, so you're sort of forcing somebody to pay a little more upfront to have a house 100 years down the road that's going to be paying less.
But aesthetically, so we just approved Remington, and let's say half the houses are at 3,500 and less, and half of them are 3,500 and more. Aesthetically, does that mean we're going to be faced with a bunch of homes in this community where we have solar panels on the roof, right? Is it, from Kyle, what I understood you as saying is the most efficient, what am I going to see out there if when we enforce this, and we've got a lot of, for example,
Potentially.
you know, are we going to,
But
there are
there's-
53 homes going out there, and presuming that half are above 3,500 in square footage and half are below, or half of those homes, so we're going to see 26 homes out there with solar panels on them. Assuming, I mean, is that what we're saying, is we're going to start, in order to implement this, the alternative right now, the state of the art is that it's solar panels?
Yeah, the
And we'll be seeing more of
I would
those.
say that a 35 square foot home with a HERS index target of 50 is most likely going to, you're most likely going to see solar panels on.
Right, so we should be prepared if we implement these tighter standards to start just accepting that we're going to see a lot more solar panels around.
You're getting about 15 to 20 homes per year adding solar right now.
Anyway, yeah.
So anybody have strong feelings about how to proceed here?
And one more thing. Yeah, and normally the payback on all of these increased costs to meet the score is generally considered to be less than 5 years.
And it's going to get better over time.
Less than 5 years for what specific mitigations? The PVC panels or something else?
No, for your entire,
For the entire.
additional
Investment.
costs of the home. Your increased installation, all of that reduces your energy costs. You're looking at paybacks of around 5 years.
Depending on what avenue you went, or any avenue.
Looking at this construction cost delta, you should check out replacing your windows. You surpassed that $16,000.
Oh, easily.
But Joe, you're actually speaking to something that I think is actually the more relevant issue. We've got so many energy inefficient homes around that if we as a community really bought into this energy efficiency thing and we're really talking about having major impact, we would really work with this community to make it affordable for insulation upgrades, window upgrades, and that kind of stuff.
When I had the audits on my house, and I think it's pretty clear, to get bang for your buck, almost nobody recommended window upgrades. Right.
Yeah.
Because it's such a big investment.
But I've just gotten estimates for insulation upgrades.
Yeah,
It's
that's-
not cheap
It's
by
not
any
as-
stretch of the
as much-
imagination.
It
Yeah.
looks good compared to window.
Yeah, it's
And I did
better.
window because I was tired of the upkeep requirements, but,
Yeah. Worth the mental health damage.
yeah. But, so the $16,000 delta on a $5,000 house, 5,000 square foot home doesn't look all that impressive to me when you think about retrofitting a home to
Yeah.
make it better. But I agree with Deb's point. We're in competition out here with the East County home, and we don't want this to be a totally unattractive place to build and come to.
Although at the end of the day, you know, what the houses that we're building are going to essentially, I mean, there's a few tiny ones that are, you know, tiny amount that maybe it's going to be on Richmond if that's the direction that we're going, or Calmonte. Otherwise, we're talking you know, something that's basically in a commercial building that's going to be significantly smaller because it's going to be condominiums or whatever. So.
Any, how would you like us to proceed?
So let's start with this. Do people have a strong feeling about where the cutoff should be? Should it be at 2,500 because that's what the average size is, or do you like 3,000 better?
I like 3,000 better, I think.
Okay. And do you like
For-
the steep,
for
for that
X-
cutoff? to wherever the
To where you
gradation
slope.
would start to slope, yeah.
I agree. I think that it should be a very flat slope.
Okay,
In
so
my
it would be
opinion.
more
Basing
like
out
the
at
Boulder County.
35.
So at 3,000, slope of Boulder County, end at 35.
Nope, that's not my
I
opinion.
thought we had that
Okay,
discussion
but-
before. that we
But that's okay.
were most stringent about it.
Whatever
It's
is
different than everybody else.
What would you like the slope to be?
I'm kind of thinking more like, it starts at the 3,000 square foot at 70, and it goes to 50 on up. So it's a slope and then a flat line
At 50?
at 50. And I think that's, very ambitious, especially given that our neighbors will not be at 50.
Chris, what were you saying?
But I think it's a happy medium there.
I thought we had a conversation before about making the most stringent PERS index at 33 or 35. I thought we had discussed that before.
I don't know, we did, but I don't think we knew that basements were included.
No, that's a
Yeah,
huge, that changes the game for me. That means that a 3,000 square foot home, if it has a basement, really probably only has maybe 2,000 square feet of livable space before they even build it, finish their basement.
It only includes finished basements, is that, I want to make that clear.
Oh, that
You said
wasn't
finished
clear.
or unfinished?
Sorry.
Yeah, we've been told finished or unfinished the whole time.
Oh, that's what you're, okay, sorry.
Okay.
Never mind, there's a discrepancy between what the HERS, well, I put in the energy model and the code requirements, sorry.
Well, that's
I deal with
something
that
else to
all
look
the
at.
time. No, you're right,
So-
what you currently understand is correct.
Based on
Finished or unfinished? Okay.
that, the most stringent requirement we would have implemented would be at 50 based on that.
What, Matt? I didn't understand your
The
comment.
lowest HERS requirement that we would require of any home would be 50. Wouldn't go below that based on,
Deborah's.
yeah.
And the construction cost delta, it appears to be somewhere around zero then? Because there's, from what it currently is, I mean, that's what it'd be, right? Am I getting that? So we have 3,500 square foot home, current index at 50, going up to 55 is a negative 4,000. And at 4,000 at 50, going down to 47 is 2,100 increase.
Yeah.
I think, so, once again, this is too much brain damage right now, so, I'm happy for wherever the board wants to pick, seems fine. From my perspective, you're doing a big service for the people that are going to buy a big house down the road because you're going to be saving them money in the long run. And we're not going to get back to like, oh, I wish they had done this insulation, and now I'm going to have to try to retrofit this thing at a really big cost. But, just my opinion.
Now, what's the size where you're starting to custom build versus spec?
Gosh, I don't know, 5,000 for sure.
You want custom homes or start, what square footage they start at?
That could be anywhere.
Right.
Within 5,000, I would guess.
Do we have any homes in the town of Superior that are at a HERS rating of 50?
Probably not, because we haven't required it. No home has been built since we've put this.
Haven't been up to that
We had
size.
one, yeah.
De facto, if we take the maximum size house in Remington and make it 50, and anything larger than that is 35, it's somewhat meaningless because we don't anticipate any of those houses ever being built because there's not a place to build them.
So, in 30 years from now, somebody might, we might be Boulder, and they might scrape off a little house there and build a completely
Right.
different house.
Right.
The unlikely in Rock Creek.
Who knows in 30 years?
That's true. In 30 years, this code won't apply, so.
That's true.
The point that the mayor made is very good, in that it costs a lot more money to retrofit a house than it does to install that improvement when it's built. I mean, quite a bit more generally. and depending on what you're doing, it can cost twice as much. So the codes, the increased target, or wherever you land here with your target, what it does is it kind of evens the playing field by making everyone hit the same target. And so if you're a builder, this builder wants to, of course everyone wants to build the best house and sell it for the least amount, or they want to make the most money while selling it for the lowest price, right? So they skimp, and generally, I mean, they don't skimp, but they engineer things to make that work out the best it possibly can for them. And unfortunately, oftentimes the stuff that gets engineered out is the stuff behind the walls that nobody can see. Right? So that's what's important about these targets. That's what these targets.
Well, we have to wrap this up. So what my direction for staff is to come up with a couple of options. So when it comes back around. So and I don't think we want to keep our current situation. I don't think anybody believes that's appropriate.
Can we define the options? I heard 70 at max, 50 at min, and 70 at max, 35
Yeah,
at
pick
min.
different, what I'd say, come back with some different minimums that the board likes and, where to start out at.
Okay.
So, and we could have a little cafeteria menu and pick off the things you like.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Does anybody want to take a break? We're over time. We can certainly do that and start in a minute or two.
Some people have been here since 5, so do you need a break?
You're looking at me?
I'd be happy to take a minute break because I know you have to
As well as I never pass up an opportunity.
I think I need to reload on coffee.
Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order a Town of Superior Board of Trustees and a Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 Board of Directors and a Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District Board of Directors and a Superior Urban Renewal Board of Commissioners and a Superior Metropolitan Districts 2 and 3 directors. I'm not sure what they are. Meeting for October 22nd, 2012. Phyllis, if you'd call the roll.
Mayor Andrew Muckle,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Leah Gregori,
Here.
Trustees Joe Cirelli.
Here.
Frank Jensen.
Here.
Jenny Pennington.
Here.
Lisa Schoonmass. Deborah Williams.
Here.
Town Manager Matt Abbott.
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry.
Here.
And Clerk Phyllis Harvey here.
Thanks. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda by Trustee Gregorius, second by Trustee Williams. Discussion?
That's a first.
I know. All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Brings us to reports, questions, and issues. Anybody want to start this evening?
I have a, go ahead.
Chris?
Let's see, we had our second grade field trip last week. El Dorado joined us this year, and it was very well attended. We had about 200 kids, second graders, come through here throughout the day. So want to definitely thank Larry and his whole team and Assistant Town Manager Beth, who participated in the presentation here in the boardroom. But it was just a great day, and we're looking forward to doing it each year hereafter. Attended a ProStack meeting. Some of the issue or some of the things we discussed or that were discussed was Town Line Park. The estimated completion date to be mostly complete is mid-February. And then there'll be some additional additions to it, specifically landscaping at later date. There was a brief discussion about herbicide and pesticide notifications, and that is being posted on the town website. There's a link to the schedule, and it will go out the Friday before the week that any application was going to be made. So if anybody had some concerns about that, they could check that on a regular basis and know where and when certain applications were going to happen. There's a good review on the priorities list, and ProStack had implemented a weighting system on all the projects that they'd like to see done. And this weighting system helps them identify higher priority projects that will come to the board. So it was a real good system that they've put in place. Monarch Mountain Bike Club has adopted the bike park, and they're coming down to the bike park on a regular basis, and they're tamping down the dirt, they're watering, they're pulling weeds, and just general maintenance. So a big appreciation to the Monarch Mountain Bike Club. And then we still have the naming contest is open for Town Line Park that can be accessed through the website, and the deadline is Friday, November 30th, and there'll be a gift card and cash prizes to schools or anybody who wants to participate in their naming contest if their name is chosen. I attended the community outreach session that was hosted by Mental Health Partners and Stan Garnett and local law enforcement agencies. Real good discussion on how to talk to your kids and help, prevent any issues with your family being in trouble. And then last, there was a neighbor of mine had a water main break, and come to find out that this is something that's happened in town on a somewhat regular basis, and it's outside of the home where the water main is rubbing up against the foundation. And evidently, it's when the soils expand and contract, it moves that copper piping. And so just want to make sure that everybody knows how to contact or who to contact when this happens. If it happens at 3 o'clock on a Saturday morning, who do they contact for that?
Well, we have a off-hours number that residents can call for issues related to that, where field staff will go out and assist. They're on call, so they go out for water breaks and stuff like that. And that's, if you call town hall, you get that message with the phone numbers, and it's also on the website, I believe. So.
Okay. And if this is a reoccurring problem in many homes because of the expansive soils, is that something worth maybe putting in the newsletter for people to check out?
Sure.
I think that's important. We would have never known anything about that unless our neighbors would have said something to us. So if there's some way we can let residents know what to look for and then who to contact and how to do it, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I wanted to see if the board and town staff has any interest in discussing and possibly implementing a child ID program through the town moving forward. It seemed like it'd be easy enough to put in place, since we do pictures already for pool access, that we could easily implement something where people could come down to town hall and get their picture taken and receive a child ID kit. So, is there interest in discussing that and seeing how if we want to?
I'd be interested. We did that at one of the Army bases I was at. I thought it was a nice thing to have done for my kids.
Yeah. Okay.
That's it. Great. Trustee Sorelli?
The only thing I would add is several of the board of the trustees met with the Boulder Valley School District for dinner and the local principals last week. I think it was Wednesday night, maybe. I'm not sure, but it was an interesting dinner. They gave us a presentation on their planning demographics of what's happening in Superior, what's happening in the school district, what's happening in the individual schools in Superior regarding growth of population and students and so forth. And discussed a number of other issues, but the key one we discussed that they did not relent on so much, but at least seemed like we're willing to look at and consider, was a redrawing of our boundaries of who attends which local schools. And that is, I don't want to hold out false hope that something will happen, but they said they would look at that. In particular, as I recall, the major concern was original town children going to Monarch K through 8 instead of one of the El Dorado or Superior, Monarch being their home school. And it was, we hope that we'll consider looking at that. So, and the other trustees who were at the meeting may have something more they want to add. But that's it.
Great, thanks. I don't think I have anything to add, except this was my day that I got to meet the second graders at El Dorado K-8, which is, sort of an annual event at El Dorado and Superior Elementary School, and they appreciated Trustee Hansen's participation and everybody's participation in the field trip here to Town Hall. So thanks to everyone involved. That's all I had. Trustee Williams.
So I attended the BVSC Education Board meeting as well, and I think Joe gave all the full information on that, and I have nothing further to report on that. I do want to find out about our transportation plan that we are including in our comprehensive plan that is in 2012, that we're revamping here. We've kind of discussed it lightly in terms of McCaslin, but we haven't really looked at the alternative modes of transportation, such as, bike transit, bus transit, pedestrian, as well as golf carts. I kind of was hoping that we could see like an all-inclusive plan. I was hoping that we would look at bus transit in terms of expanding 228, which is the RTD bus, resurrecting the call-in ride that we lost, possibly integrating a shuttle for the town center, should we, end up building that soon or in the future, that would take us to the park and ride. There's 2 different park and rides that they could take, shuttle, like a nice little loop. Include the commuter train if that ever happens through fast tracks. So anyway, I'm kind of wondering, where are we with this transportation plan, and how can we see a little bit more on that before we get to the comp plan?
Well, I don't think those elements will be done before the comp plan. I think the comprehensive plan will references the transportation plan, and so as we make modifications to that in the future, it doesn't have to be wrapped up for the comprehensive plan, in my mind. So it's going to the Planning Commission for their review, and then in December, it's going to come back to the board for additional review, and then.
Are you talking the transportation component or the whole comp plan?
The whole, just the transportation plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is the transportation plan included in the comprehensive plan for 2012 or not? It's a separate document?
It's an appendix, I believe.
It's attached to the
Yeah, it's attached. So
comprehensive.
as it changes.
So if we approve the comprehensive plan, then are we essentially approving the transportation plan before we've actually fully seen it?
You're referencing the transportation plan, which is attached to the comprehensive plan. You're approving the comprehensive plan, one of the attachments is the transportation plan. So as it changes, you don't have to go back and amend the comprehensive plan, because the transportation plan changes.
Okay, I'm a little confused on that. It seems that if you approve the comp plan with the transportation plan, you basically are approving whatever is there now.
You're approving a baseline transportation plan as part of the comp plan.
But nothing is fixed in stone. I mean, we've done comprehensive plan amendments, not redos of the entire comprehensive plan several times in the past, so.
So in December, when it comes to the board, and it's gone through the PC, we would be amending the comp plan?
No.
No. It would be an addendum? I mean, I'm not sure I understand the process and how that
I mean,
relates.
you can delay the comprehensive plan approval if you want until this gets, I mean, if the rest of the board and wants to have everything wrapped up, but, or you can approve comprehensive plan, the transportation plan will be attached, and as that plan changes, you can do an amendment to the comprehensive plan to incorporate those changes. I don't necessarily think that's necessary, but I mean, if you want to go that far around.
So what's coming next down the pike? What should we be seeing next? Is that the comp plan approval process, or is,
Correct.
so we won't be
That's on
seeing,
November 13th.
so we won't be seeing the transportation plan until maybe November or December?
Right.
Okay. Go ahead.
It's a living document, I mean,
I guess I have a slight problem with that in the fact that I'm approving something that I haven't fully seen and I'm not sure I even agree with. So I'm going to have to look at that comp plan and
Okay.
decide what's best.
How much, we have to look at it with the idea of how much does the comprehensive plan actually reference the transportation plan? That may be impossible to pick out of your head, but maybe that's something we need to scrub and see.
yeah, I, off the top of my head, I can't tell you that, but we'll go back and look at that.
I actually don't believe that baseline transportation plan, as put forth thus far, is not something I can
I tend to agree with you.
with.
I'd almost prefer to keep the current transportation plan as bare as that is.
Yeah.
And work on the new one.
I could do two ways. I could review the comp plan without any transportation component and later append the transportation component.
Yeah.
Or I could delay the comp plan until the transportation component has made it through the whole pike.
I was hoping we could do your first suggestion.
I would agree with the first suggestion.
Although that's why I was wondering how much the comp plan actually references
Yeah, and I'll
the
go back.
transportation plan. Because if it references it, you can't really do it without.
I agree.
Okay.
All right, so moving forward here, I attended an Open Space Advisory Committee meeting, and that committee passed two motions, which is in your packet. I'm not going to read them, but basically, it's asking, the first one is asking that the Level 3 parcel be an open space, an entire parcel for open space acquisition, and not two-thirds, as it is currently in the comp plan. So that's something we should consider. The second one is, it's referring to Ridge 2 parcel, in that they do not feel that the Ridge 2 parcel warrants spending any open space acquisition funds. It's not even a low priority, it's a no priority when you refer to the open space summary report. So that's another thought. I know that was something that we put as an afterthought for that particular parcel. So those two things that the OSAC committee would like the board to consider. Also, I attended a Denver Regional Council of Governments meeting, and they passed the 2013 budget, and that was kind of an increase of revenue by $5.5 million, which is basically includes the Sustainable Communities Grant that was awarded by HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development. And this is a 3-year project that is basically supporting regional implementation activities that fulfill one of DRCOG's long-range goals, which is the development of higher-density, mixed-use, transit, and pedestrian-oriented urban centers. So kind of the concept of build up and not out. Also, I just wanted to mention a event that is sponsored by a resident in the Saddlebrook community, and it is in fact, I have some copies if anyone is interested. It is a community pet parade near our dog park. And it is Sunday, October 28th from 4 to 6 p.m. And just show up with your dog dressed in Halloween costume. And so I have some of these. I'll give these over here, and people can, if you're interested, take a flyer. Thank you.
Thanks. Trustee Kirkors.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for you, Matt, and for the board as well. I'm a little bit disturbed about Excel's decision to ban any holiday lights on their, or banners or American flags or anything on their light poles. I think that's just ridiculous, actually.
It's ridiculous.
Thank you. I would like to know how many Excel light poles have come down because of the weight of an American flag? Or holiday lights?
None.
Exactly, so...
And a lot of them are designed for that purpose.
We have some
No.
clients who paid extra for each of their light poles in order to be able to put things on them.
Exactly, so I would
Including
propose...
ours.
Yeah.
Yes.
All of ours are, no, I can understand their concern.
Original
though,
town.
If they weren't built for that, but if they were built specifically to hold banners, then...
No, it's a preposterous, actually, claim, and I think, I know the city of Lafayette is taking a very active role in opposing that, and
So is the city of Blackhawk.
Blackhawk as well.
Yes.
So I would like to have some kind of a formal response back to Excel from this board, and I just think that's just outrageous.
They can certainly do that, or just ignore them.
I mean, I'm
They
not
actually have said that they will send someone out on New Year's Day to remove any that are up. So whether or not that's true, and that they will keep them. Or
They will
throw
keep
out
them,
or
they will
dispose of
confiscate.
them, or whatever they want to do with them.
Okay, well, I'd like to see that. So,
Okay.
we've been doing holiday lights for years and years and years. They beautify this town and celebrate the great spirit, and I think this thing is just plain wrong. And I'm really black and white about things. This is one of those occasions that that's one thing. The second thing is, I understand that Phillips 66 is going to be selling the Star Tech parcel. What, maybe some comments from you and from you, Matt, what is the potential impact on the town of Superior? Is it on the market already? Are they actively?
I don't know if it is
I don't think
yet,
so.
but it's soon to be. Yeah.
So my perspective in that, feel free to weigh in. I think that our financial models have not really depended upon that. I mean, if it was there, clearly it would increase property values in town, and clearly it would accelerate some of the things that would happen on the town center, and probably would accelerate what's ever on the Resolute property. But then again, none of our models are dependent upon that, so.
My take is that what they were proposing was complementary to what we were proposing in our town center. They could propose something much more competitive to something that we want to do. That's just one thing to be concerned about. But that's all speculative.
I mean, in a lot of ways, that property is actually better because they cleaned it up quite a bit. they put a lot of money in it,
Yeah,
which is
it's
interesting.
all buildings now.
Yeah, oh, yeah. So
It's amazing what you can do with money.
I know. So anyway, just as we were discussing the town center, I wonder if Mr. Worthington can address that a little bit? Okay, that's what I have.
Trustee Pennington?
On the second grade field trip, real kudos to Chris and to the Historical Commission. I participated in that, and it was a great time, and it also pointed out the level of effort put towards historical preservation in this town. Grasso Park is a real gem, and Asti Park is a real gem, and the Miners House is really just terrific, and these second graders were really engaged. My second grade neighbor came over and was so excited. She got to sit in the mayor's chair and be mayor for a moment. Anyway, so I think that's just a great thing. On the Boulder Valley School District dinner, something that came forth is their interest in collaborating on the baseball diamond to rehab it, to possibly rehab it, and so I didn't want to lose that. And I don't know if the appropriate thing is to put it through to ProStack or how we actually move that forward to a productive discussion with them. So just wanted to throw it out here. Had a library board strategic planning meeting. Nothing actually came out of that. It's just a long-term plan. I wanted to reiterate what Chris was saying about the water line. I had mentioned that in terms of a gas line at a previous meeting, and then I actually was told a story, Deb, I think by you, but I may have forgotten it, about a electrical line that was actually pulled loose very slowly from its connection and posed a grave fire threat, and they luckily caught it, and it was attributed to...
There has been a fire here associated with that.
So I think this expansive soils and all of those connections, we need to make homeowners aware, and then, Jim, I'd throw that out at the HOA as well, that is actually a existing threat. I went through Sagamore the other day just on a casual thing, and I noticed that a bunch of the new concrete work marked where it's cracking, particularly at the drains. It's already marked green, but it's got vertical cracks through. I was a little disturbed to see it because I just think it went in last year, and I wanted to know whether or not that was under warranty or not. Okay. And then you put out a memo, Matt, on swim team, adding an extra hour. Is that something you wanted our feedback on, or?
I was thinking just offline, unless you want to
Okay.
talk about it tonight.
Okay, yeah, I can do that offline as well.
I'd like to hear the rest of the board's comments on that, though, too.
Oh, you'd like it here?
Sure.
Well, we could do it now, but they'll also come back forward to a use agreement with us in the first part of the year, I assume, which would probably be a good place to do it as well.
Yeah. That's fine, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay, so...
As long as it's highlighted,
Yeah.
we
right.
don't miss it.
And I just mentioned we had interviews for the various advisory committees, during which I mentioned we have in our advisory committee outline having these outreach meetings semi-annually. October would be the date for the next one. So just wanted to throw that out there formally and encourage that to happen. That's all.
Thank you.
Can I
Yes, Trustee Sorelli.
Just one last kudos is to the Rock Creek Homeowners Association for I thought the Oktoberfest was really great, and that was open to the entire town, even though it was an HOA event, and so thank you to them.
If we're in the kudos realm, I have to say that I had a chance to speak with the Monarch Little League president the other day, and they were very appreciative of the roofs putting over the dugouts at the town center, and they like the field so much they're hoping to run some more tournaments there, so just as an FYI.
And one more kudo here. The Superior Chamber of Commerce had their rooftop drop, and I received it yesterday, and it has a little rooftop golden ticket. Find out if you're a winner, go on their website, look and see the number. And I thought it was probably their best bag yet. It had many more businesses in it and a lot of giveaways that were just fabulous. So kudos to them.
Thanks. Town manager?
On the school district board meeting, I'm going to work on my notes for that and add a PowerPoint, and I'll send those to the entire board so you'll have one. Starting our seasonal winterizing of the irrigation system throughout town, so you'll see that. Usually takes about 2 weeks for them to complete that. Sales tax remains strong for the month, up 4.8% and 4.1% for the year, so still seeing strong indicators there. That's all I had.
Thanks. Town attorney?
Nothing, thank you.
Town clerk? All right, thanks. That brings you to item number 5, public comment on consent agenda and non-agenda items.
It's taking a little longer to get it. George Cutler, Superior. I'm going back to the work session of September the 10th on the utility financing sufficiency. They want to raise the water rates 5% again and the sewer rates, and it says $3 to $4 per month. I think this is outrageous. It's been raised for the last 3 years, 5%. When we combined the Superior Metropolitan District and Superior, we were told it was going to affect us. Well, it is affecting us, 40% in 8 years. I think it ought to be pulled off of there completely, that $165,000. I'm not here to support the Superior Metropolitan District, number one. If that's the case, turn back over to Mr. Mandrick and Roger McCoy, and let them worry about how come it isn't working. I know the board is taking care of it, but it doesn't seem like it's working, and now you're sticking this on the people that live here, and that's not right. Just because staff wants to increase 5% of this, 5% of that, you all raise your hand and say yes. Let's raise a hand and say no, we're not going to do it. That's, Social Security lines don't go up no 5% every year.
So,
Trust me, Mayor.
so just along these lines, so original town sewer rates are pegged to Louisville, so that's going to be that's unchanged compared to, whatever Louisville rates are. So the water rates, I think we all get it. Nobody likes paying paying big water bills, but unfortunately our rates don't come close to covering our costs for the utility, so unfortunately that's just the nature of the beast.
What do you think we put our lines in the town of Superior for? Not so our water rates would be really high. We put our own sewer line in, the original town did, and we're just getting stuck every time we turn around, Mayor. This is not the way it was set up. Okay, please think about that. Secondly, I don't appreciate your little note on the door coming in here. Ballot box, we don't have one. Why? You promoted this, changing this election so we couldn't come in and vote to a write-in ballot. Why? It's just like having no post office, no ballot box here. Why?
I'll turn that over to the clerk, but it wasn't elections.
I don't live in Louisville, and I don't feel like going over and mail my ballots at the post office. Spend 63 cents or 40 cents, whatever. I would like to drop it off in my town. I'd like to vote in my town. I can't do it because we've changed the rules so we could have an extended term of 6 months in the office. I'm joking.
Phyllis, can you give him some information as to why we don't do that?
The election is run by Boulder County, and they have certain drop-off places to drop your ballots off. Superior is not one of those. We don't have the resources to take everybody's ballot over and drop it off for them. So they have to take it to the designated drop-off places.
Or mail it.
Or mail it, or I think you can bring it down election day down here.
I'll come down and put a stamp on my envelope.
And if we were a drop-off, would it cost us more money?
I don't know how Boulder County would do that. I mean, they set They said it, I don't. They say that these places will have the drop-off locations.
So what's the closest one to drop off?
Yeah, town,
At Louisville where?
where you get your driver's license.
Oh, okay.
County building.
Oh, good.
Anyway, it should be looked into. We got 12,000 people here. It's like having no post office, Mayor.
Excuse me, not your driver's license, registration. Driver's license is a whole different place.
Registration down across from Town Hall down?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
City Hall.
City Hall, council, whatever it's called.
There is a list on the county's website with all of the locations and all of the times, as well as early voting and replacement ballots.
Can we put a link on our website for that? Great.
Just a quick say on this work session, it says that the state and the federal government is mandating water and sewer plant improvements. There ain't grant money we can apply for that $10 million there?
Those are largely unfunded mandates.
Huh?
They're unfunded mandates.
No, I just thought I'd ask the question.
Great
That's a
question.
good question.
Now, since you've been talking back there, I'm going to extend my time up here talking. On my ballot, there's an 8 mil increase for the fire departments. 4 for now and 4 in consecutive years, 1, 2, 3, and 4, which makes a total of 8 mils. Louisville's mill levy is 6.5 mils. Lafayette is 2.5 mils. This will increase our mill levy 21 mils, over 21 mils. We tore a fire station down on Baseline, it was over there 20 years, and because they want a nice new one. I think they need their hands slapped on both sides, asking people for an 8 mil increase to make it 21 mils. I'm oppose this completely. A little bit's all right, but we're a little bit too much already. This first 6.5 mils was supposed to be for the maintenance and the upkeep. The second 6.5 mils was for the buildings. The next one, the 8 mils, is for more maintenance. I'd like this board to take a stance on it. That fire district is in this town of Superior. And if we got to dissolve it and get our own fire department again, let's do it. This is costing us a lot of money. Figure it out. They're saying $34, $100,000. Not one of you about sitting back at the table has got a $100,000 house value. I don't. So let's do something about this. I'm serious. It's a shame we spent 3 years paying rent on a house up here to have a fire department in this original town. But you know what happened? We built a mansion over there in Rock Creek, and what did we get in Superior original? Nothing. They took it out of here. We got stored in a fire wagon up there is all we're doing. I just don't think this is fair for the people that live in this original town. I don't. And I'm one of them. I got other things, but I guess I'll have to come back. I guess maybe we better put our Christmas tree lights up right away. Those have got their stuff out, and Home Depot's got theirs out, then we won't have to fight public service about putting them up. Because if there is a problem there, I want to see some poles put up immediately. Not tell me a month before Christmas we don't have time. Because we ought to change these Christmas tree lights, start right now. I'd like to see better ones on Coal Creek Drive, like we used to have. I used to put them up for years. I didn't get paid to do it either. So let's just think about some of these things I've talked to you about, please. There's other things, but I'll talk about them later.
Great. Thanks very much. Additional public comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items?
Good evening, Mayor and Board. Michelle Horton, 3341 West Torrey, Human Superior. So I wanted to actually say thank you for organizing the visit to Town Hall. It's the first year that El Dorado have really been included. I'm sorry that my children missed out on that opportunity, but I'm glad it's going forward. So thank you for finally having that happen for all of our community schools. And then just in the comments that were recommended by the Open Space Advisory Committee regarding the Level 3 land. I know this will be coming up further. I personally actually think there's enough open space land, and that is a great spot to have potential development, because there is that big apartment complex back there, and they have no resources close to them to go and purchase any quick items, like a small grocery or anything. So I would like the town to really consider that as a possible revenue-generating spot and look at that, because it's not really a place that would be very hikeable. It's just flat, kind of bare land. So really look at what the benefit is going to be having more open space surrounding us, as opposed to finally something revenue-generating. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much, appreciate it. Additional public comment? Seeing none, that brings us to item number 6, presentations, and we have great pleasure of welcoming some candidates for office, some currently holding office, some hoping to re-hold office, and
Yeah, thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Magley?
As we did at the last meeting, we invited, sent out invitation to federal and state candidates that may be representing the town to come to tonight's meeting and speak to the board. And Congressman Jared Polis accepted that invitation, is here tonight, and would ask that you come forward.
Thanks for coming. Can I just start out by saying we really appreciate the time that you spend in town. It's I'm sure that you have a very busy schedule. You have a lot of things on your plate, and you always seem to take some time out for us. We're not a big place, but we appreciate you coming.
Well, it's always a pleasure to visit with your town council here in Superior. So, and I'll be keep this relatively brief and be happy to answer any questions you have. I'll start with some of the kind of federal issues, and then we'll talk about a couple of the local ones. This is an important time, important crossroads for our country. We need to get our economy going. We've seen unemployment tick down in Colorado and tick down in Boulder County. That's a step in the right direction, but it's still above where it was when this recession started back in 2008. So I think encouraging the recovery is very important. Congress, frankly, needs to do a better job providing fiscal stability. There's a lot of uncertainty that I'm sure many of your constituents are worried about with regard to the tax code. And I'm not in a position where I know any better than you or they where it's going to be come January 1st. There's something called both the fiscal cliff, which includes tax increases across the board that both Democrats and Republicans agree we should not do. There's some slight disagreement about people with higher income levels, but on 95% of the tax cuts, Democrats and Republicans agree they should not occur. It would hinder the recovery. And then there is automatic spending cuts called sequestration. They were both put in place to try to convince Congress itself to balance the budget. So hopefully the best outcome would be in November, December, Congress can actually agree on a plan to balance the budget in a lame duck session. But it is important to do something more thoughtful than this across-the-board set of budget cuts. And just as I'm sure in times past your town council has had to cut budgets, whatever aggregate number we need to hit in cutting the budget, we should allocate that in a thoughtful way across different government programs. Some that aren't working probably deserve to be cut a lot more than 3%, maybe eliminated. There's others that are important investments in our future and should be held harmless or even increased as we try to hit an overall number of cuts to balance the budget. So hopefully that will occur. As many of you know, my own background is in education, and I'm really running to help make sure that every family has access to opportunity, improving our schools. The reauthorization of ESEA, the main federal education law, will likely be up in the next session. I hope to replace No Child Left Behind with a new federal education law to get accountability right, help expand and replicate what works in public education, and change what doesn't work. Moving to Boulder County issues and the town of Superior issues, Highway 36 looming among them. We've been successful in helping secure some federal resources through the Tiger Grant program, and we continue to be focused on this program as one of the most important transportation projects in Colorado, and certainly in this congressional district. Now, with the redistricting process, the Highway 36 corridor will pick up an additional member of Congress, because Westminster will have a different representative. It won't be part of our district anymore. Broomfield is, and as is everything towards Boulder. That's a good thing for Highway 36. That's in the 7th Congressional District, where Ed Perlmutter and Joe Kors are running for Congress. But it'll be very helpful to me in the next Congress to have two voices for the Highway 36 project and coalition rather than one voice, and I will work very diligently to get up to speed Mr. Perlmutter or Mr. Kors after this election about the importance of this project, and we'll make sure to invite them to the coalition meetings and share the importance of that project to the area. There's a number of other issues that we work on with regard to water access and water projects, including some that Town of Superior has an interest in up north, and we're obviously tracking those. Are not at the point where there's a congressional decision to be made, but we are continuing to want to listen to your agenda and make sure we can help in any way to the extent you need help navigating federal bureaucracies or navigating through red tape or dealing with approval or seeking grants. Me and my office are happy to help. So with that, I'd love to open it up to any thoughts you have.
Great, thanks very much. And this is open, obviously, to the public as well. But questions from the board? Trustee Sorelli?
Since I think I feel safe in saying that everybody's tired of the polarization that's been going on in our politics, do you have any personal ideas about how to improve that atmosphere?
Well, I think what the public overwhelmingly wants, and I certainly hear this everywhere, is a Congress that puts results over ideology. And I think part of the problem of this current Congress we're in now is it's quite the opposite. It puts ideology over results. There will likely be, barring some landslide from either side, which doesn't seem to be in the cards, there will likely be mixed governance of this country. And that seems to be what people want, but they want mixed governance that works together, not mixed governance that does nothing and refuses to address problems. So hopefully other people in other parts of the country running for Congress are hearing the same thing from their constituents. Yes, you go in there with your beliefs and your values, but we expect you to roll up your sleeves and work together to move forward. And hopefully that the next Congress will be a lot better than this Congress in that regard. It took the Democrats and Republicans working together to get us into this huge deficit and debt mess. It'll take both parties working together to get us out of this mess. There's no way that either party alone will be able to solve or move forward on these pressing national issues.
Great. Other questions? Any from the public at all? And if I think that we know how to contact you in case we have any questions, but I think we have a link on our website about how to get a hold of your office as well.
The government website is polis.house.gov. The campaign website is polisforcongress.com.
Very good. Thank you so much once again for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I believe we have another candidate running for office here.
There's a packet of information. Do I give that to you?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
Just begin?
Yeah.
Okay,
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem and trustees for the opportunity to come tonight and talk to you. Maybe a little bit about myself might be in order. I'm a second-generation Colorado.
And who are you? And who are you, in case people are watching?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm Diane Primavera, running for House District 33.
Very good.
And House District 33 includes Broomfield, the town of Superior, and the Boulder County side of Erie. Changed a little bit from 2010 because it also included part of Westminster in 2010. So anyway, I am a Colorado native, second generation, and single mom. Raised my two daughters here in this district in Broomfield. And I've actually had experience in the work field in both the public, private, nonprofit, and I've owned my own business. So I have a lot of experience in the job area, and jobs and the economy seem to be the issue that are most on voters' minds. I also have a master's degree in vocational rehabilitation, so I spent most of my life trying to help people find jobs. So again, since jobs is the issue that's on most people's minds, I bring a lot to that table. I appreciated your comment about people needing to work together to find common ground to get things done. I did serve in the State House for 4 years, and one of the things that I was most proud of when I was down there was my ability to bring different sides together to get things done. 76% of the bills that I sponsored had bipartisan support. And I always knew that when, I needed to get something big done, I needed to work with both sides of the aisle to do that, and I was able to do that, and I was, very proud of that. I gave you a packet of information, and it has pretty much a story about who I am and what I'm about. It also has a list of endorsements in there, and I think I have currently, I'm still working on a few more, but 38 endorsements. I was really proud recently to get the Denver Post endorsement. I've also gotten the Metro North Chamber, which is nice. Oftentimes Democrats, and I'm a Democrat, don't often get the chamber endorsement, but I was very proud of that, along with the realtors and the contractors. I was also
And Paulus.
and Congressman Polis and Governor Hickenlooper. And so I think the list of endorsements show that I'm able to bring both sides together, because I also got most of the union endorsements as well. So my campaign has worked really hard this time. I've knocked on over 20,000 doors. I've been through the district 2.5 times. I've walked Superior 8 out of the last 10 years, so I'm very familiar with the residents in Superior. Come to your festivals and your parades and that kind of thing. For me, it would be a real honor to serve again and to represent Superior and the rest of the district. When I was at the state capitol, one of the things that I was impressed with was that I had 24 voters, I believe, at the time in Weld County. And the Weld County commissioners came down once a month to the Capitol, and we sat down and had breakfast together. And even though I only represented 24 people in Weld County, I always went to the Weld County breakfasts. And so I'd be more than happy to meet with the trustees on a regular basis to make sure I'm well-versed on your issues and be able to represent you even better at the Capitol.
Great, thanks. Questions? I might just start out by, do you have a couple of bullet points of the things that you'd like to accomplish in the next 2 years if you were to be elected?
Well, again, jobs in the economy are a big issue. The other thing that I was proud of when I was down there was I served on actually 3 committees, and I asked to be on the Legislative Audit Committee. It's the audit committee that makes sure that government is run as efficiently as possible. And in a bipartisan manner, I was elected vice chair and chair by both the Democrats and the Republicans of the audit committee. And out of that committee, I sponsored 19 bills to make government more efficient. So that's one thing I'd like to focus on, again, when I get down there. Should I get appointed to that committee, I'd be really happy to work on government accountability.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Williams?
I was wondering, there was a bill that was supposedly to be introduced but wasn't. We did get to read a kind of a draft of it. It was called the Beltway Bill, or BEEP Bill. And it was supported, for the most part, by the Jefferson Parkway Toll Road Authority. And I'm wondering if you know anything about it, and if you've heard where that bill, or if that bill might be introduced this session.
I do not know if it's going to be introduced this session. I was on Transportation and Energy for 4 years when I was down there. It was a committee I really appreciated. It would be a committee that I would request, again, because transportation in this area is a huge issue, not only for Superior, but the biggest issue for the Metro North Chamber is the congestion on I-25. I-25 North has the most congestion of any part of our highway system in rush hour and that kind of thing. So I would be really happy to be vigilant about that bill. If it is introduced, I'd be wanting to be in contact with you, because I know that's an issue that you're passionate about.
Very much so. So if you're elected, and good luck to you, please contact us, and we can work together and see how that bill gets introduced, I'm assuming.
Yeah, your input would be really important.
Trustee Gregorius?
I was just going to say your opponent is a young man. So we have youth versus experience, it seems. How will you address that?
Address my opponent, or address the fact that he's...
No, his youthfulness, I guess.
Okay. Well, youth is a really good thing.
That's what I'll appreciate it.
But wisdom is better.
Well, there are some contrasts between my opponent and I that are more than youth. That is one thing. Being a Colorado native, I think I really have an excellent grasp of what Colorado's all about. Having lived in the district, owning my own home, for the last 12 or 13 years in Broomfield, owning my own home in Colorado since 1976, is really important. So, I think even though he offers youth, I bet I can outwork him.
Sounds good.
Great. Other questions from the
Good
board?
luck.
Thank you.
Trustee
I
Whittington?
will say this race is extremely important. If it is anyway, because the representation in the House divided on this last election in terms of Democrats versus Republican and this one race, as I understand it. But if weighed by the amount of mail I am getting in my personal household, which represents every political spectrum, I am inundated daily with flyers on this particular race, so I encourage everybody to take it very seriously.
Thank you. Yeah, and anything that, the unfortunate thing about the way campaigns run anymore is a candidate really loses control of their campaign. You'll notice on the mailers that I passed out tonight, anything that I pay for, it will say on the bottom, paid for by Primavera for House District 33. It will always be positive. I've done a really, my campaign manager and I have done a really good job raising money so that I could conduct the kind of campaign that's winning. But other groups jump into the fray, as you know, and they don't have to disclose where their money comes from, and they don't have to even tell the truth about either of us. And it's really a shame that candidates lose control of their positive campaigns that way.
Okay. Questions from the public at all? Seeing none, well, once again, thank you very much for coming down. We appreciate your time to speak with us, and good luck one way or the other.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for your time as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the consent agenda, and remaining on the consent agenda tonight is approval of the minutes of the October 8th, 2012 Board of Trustees meeting, acceptance of the minutes of the Open Space Advisory Committee and the Planning Commission meetings, approval of liquor license renewal for the Costco store, adoption of a resolution renewing the agreement with Ramey Environmental Compliance, Inc. for water and wastewater plant operations for Superior Metropolitan District Number 1, adoption of a resolution approving an amendment to the Boulder Valley Ice Agreement, and a preliminary reading of an ordinance amending Article 26 of Chapter 16 and Article 3 of Chapter 11 of the Superior Municipal Code, all relating to stormwater quality. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as stated.
By Trustee Gregorus, second by Trustee Williams. Further discussion? Seeing none. Phyllis?
Williams?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes.
Buckle?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Gregorus?
Yes.
Sirelli?
Yes, I couldn't figure out that pattern.
Thanks very much. That motion carries. That brings us to item number 8, a continued public hearing and adoption of an ordinance approving the plan development, plan zoning, adoption of a resolution approving the preliminary plat, and adoption of a resolution approving the final plat for the town center site. And this, once again, is a continuation of the public hearing, and proof of publication has already been noticed. So, Mr. Magley.
Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned, this was continued from the September 24th meeting to tonight to allow staff and our consultants and project team more time to provide additional follow-up to the board's questions and requests with regard to the plan development and document as well as the design guidelines. The project team has worked hard in a short period of time to, I think, address the board's questions and issues. And Carl, are you going to lead tonight? So Carl Worthington with Oz will start the presentation, followed by members of his project team, and then we'll follow up with questions from the board and discussion.
Is this all ready to go?
Got it.
Great. Good evening, Mayor and members of the trustees. Thanks so much again for sticking with us this long. As I said, we've been almost 6 months. And as Matt just said, at the...
Just for the viewing public, you are...
Carl Worthington, I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you.
Carl Worthington Associates with the Oz team. Civil Resources are here, and Winston Associates are here, so we'll be happy to answer questions too. But as you remember, at our last meeting, I think we got a very good response and some good pointers that we've tried to respond to. So I'm going to go tonight through a very abbreviated show that tries to target those points and to see whether we've hit the mark on those, and if not, we'll make any additional adjustments. But let me see, maybe we could get that. Thank you. Let's see here. So we've already, our last meetings, talked about all the steps that we've gone through over the last 6 months. The last meeting that we have tonight is this October 22nd, following our 24 September Town Board approval. So tonight what we're going to do is to talk about the final revisions and recordation if we're ready to take that step. Just to go back and refresh what we talked about at the last meeting in terms of suggestions that we got from board members. They wanted us to look at 2 different hotel additional sites so that you had some options, that actually there are 3 options that are part of the plan that gives a little more flexibility both for the town as well as developers. So we'll talk about that tonight. We talked about civic uses and town hall, police, community recreation, senior center, library, sheriff's substation maybe, and the fire department headquarters. Those are public facilities that we think can go in the town center. That's subject to a little bit further work that you would do in terms of prioritizing that and sizing those facilities, and then we could help find some locations for that. We also went through and talked a little bit more about the architectural character. We've taken out a few of the slides that were on the cool side, not the temperature cool, but they felt a little bit cold, and we responded to that, which we'll show. And then we've also modified the architectural materials that we've continued to work with you on, and to embrace the architectural character. We've warmed up the colors, and we've played down. We had kind of metal roofs as one of the vernaculars. That's still possible, but we've kind of reversed the order of that now shingles and other types per your suggestions. And then there's still, as Matt had mentioned last time, and some of the board members, that there's quite an interest in still, is there a place for some additional recreation near the town center? And of course, as we've shown in the plan, north of the creek, we have a little bit of recreation, but that's not the Little League or softball field. So that's one that hopefully eventually, whether it's south of this project or in the vicinity, might be able to find a footprint for that would actually be part of the town center. And a lot of that would depend on whether the Explorer project moves ahead or it doesn't, so there's still a lot of flexibility on that. So let's go through each of those and see what you think in terms of some of these options that you'd requested. Now, the first one, this is the original plan that we presented the last couple of meetings with potential ice center up north with some parking. And in the last iteration, remember, the north piece of the Menkek and the city property was delineated as a park where the existing pond is. And that's one option. However, there's been quite a bit of interest both in the public sector of saying, are there hotel sites, because there's a lot of interest in this, as well as some of you folks saying, I see a different chess move to where we ought to put the hotels. We really like the hotel up north, but if we kept that pond and did not move it to here, then the hotel doesn't fit. But if we say, let's move the pond from here, this is an inset, if we took that as a detail, the ice center, if that moves down to the south, and there's been continuing negotiations on seeing whether that's possible. So if the ice center moves to the south, then up north we could then recapture the pond site, if we call it that, right at McCaslin and Marshall Road Extended. that's a bigger site. It's more what we call a garden hotel type of site. But we also, and that's shown here, this could be up 170 rooms. It could be more than that, depending on how many floors they wanted to go and how a hotelier would handle the parking. But that would work very nicely. That would take the place of where the pond is. The pond might actually, once it gets drained, actually be parking under the building. I mean, that would be one option. Instead of filling the hole, you'd actually shape the hole, and that might be a basement and some parking. But each hotelier would have a different idea. But if we did want to recapture that, that could be one of the hotels with an entryway coming off right here, which would in effect be right where you go into the liquor store and across the first entranceway. That could be the big hotel, a big terrace, swimming pool looking out over the recreation area. And to the north of Marshall Road, that where the ice center is right now, that could be some additional office buildings, but it could also be a little bit smaller hotel that actually could fit there also. And there could be some hoteliers that say, we want to be there. There's a little more noise next to the freeway because you're close. You have the pond here that we would replace at that point if we vacated the area here. But that gives you some new options to market and to show, depending on what you feel are the highest priorities.
So Carl, before you go to the next screen, how if the inset builds out, especially the big hotel, how do you see that connecting to the rest of the town center?
Well, I think actually it works pretty nicely. Just looking at the site, we've got the informal soccer field here, we've got the bike trail below, and this is floodplain, but it's also grass and park-like area. So what it would do would be to perch on the upper piece that's above that floodplain. So you'd still be looking down into the park, recreation, whatever that might want to be in final design. So I think it actually is nice because you're up on kind of the shelf looking out over that, and a porte-cochere here where you drive in, turn around, some surface parking, but possibly also parking under the footprint of the building.
So can I walk, if I stay there, can I walk down to all the amenities?
There's walkways that come through here. Here's the trail. And so there's walkways that come down on both sides after you get down the grade, and you also connect to the walkway systems over here, as well as going underneath the bridge under McCaslin. So you have really good access to those areas up here as well as down here. The steeper slope is right in here, which would be, as you can see it right here. So that could either be the park area, or that could even be another location for the amphitheater. If we said later, or you said, gee, we want a little bigger amphitheater, now that we have a hotel over there, maybe that is a part of the hotel kind of district.
And the pedestrian bridge is anticipated that it would go in close to that.
Pedestrian bridge would come across right here with some little kiosk, the informal soccer fields there, and then you can walk up the hill, which would be going up, which goes right outside the window a little bit. That would be the pedestrian bridge coming across.
Carl, there's another connection north-south, just to the east of.
So that I know that you're just reminding Carl of what to say. So, but otherwise I have to have you at the mic. Thanks.
She's a good tutor. Well, there's walkways. We would plan that there'd be a walkway possibly from the hotel even over to the center where the old Chicago is. There'd be a walkway here, there'd be walkways there, walkways around the upper area, and then walkways all the way connecting around there.
Nancy Blackwood with us. There's another, just to address your question, there's also another connection here across the creek.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's
Low water.
multiple.
Yeah, no, that's right. Let's see, let's go to the kind of illustrative plan here. Now you can see the connections there, the connection that Nancy just mentioned here, which is a low, kind of a low water crossing. The sort of bridge is the one we talked here. Here would be the soccer field. So if you flip then over to here, now you can see the major bikeway coming. You have connections here, connections going up onto that terrace, but all of that looks out over all of the creek, and yet up here you have two legs of the thing that looks at the mountains and so on. And a beautiful entryway with a porte-cochere right up coming in. And then this one, as I said, possibly L-shaped. That's kind of like one of the element ones that we talked about. And that one would have its green area, some parking possibly under the building, parking lot or structure here, and you'd still have the driveway going through to Old Chicago. And then if we looked at it in 3D, this is what we had a couple of weeks ago with Old Chicago here and Superior Liquor. This was roughly the size of the proposed ice center. It may not be that big ultimately, but that would be one size. And if that can be moved down into this block and this block, then that opens that up. And if you look at the inset here, you now see the larger hotel here, and then the smaller hotel located there with the newly located pond that would be located back over here where the ice center would be. And we'd still, depending on what the ice center would do, there could still be a hotel possibly there, but chances are it would simply be the retail face, and then the ice center somewhere on these 2 acres. They're talking about a 10-acre trade, as you know, and so that's up to further discussions. And just in terms of the massing, here's what we have now, but in the future, these could be the 2 new footprints of a hotel if the ice center went down and was located in this block. Here's the urban hotel, here's where the ice center would go with McCaslin along there. So each of these puts it back into the physical model, and I think it still works very nicely. And here again with the existing where we have the hotel and or 1 or 2 other locations up to the north if we relocate the pond. And then we've gone back and tidied up the character ambiance kind of shots that we have that give kind of a sense of architectural objectives. The warmer tones, stone, and we've continued to kind of refine that. We took out some of the darker gray, a little bit cooler kind of colors, and we modified the material kind of board of looking at a little bit warmer colors of stone and siding or whatever type of materials that could be used. And there's a lot of flexibility, but it kind of sets a standard that there's a theme that might want to be followed. And then the other solid wall colors of paint, stucco, and so on, with the softer tones warmed up here, and then some other warmer accent tones. The roof, whether that be shingles, there could also be metal if it fell within the right quality standard and the right color.
Could be a combo.
Could be a combo. And as you know, when you the way this is set up, when a developer would come in with the final development plan, then you really get to crack the whip and say, show me exactly what you're talking about. But this gives you a backdrop of saying, well, here's the theme that was adopted. Can we get close to that rather than everybody just guessing at what you might think is nice that night? And then this, I think, again, really gives a feeling of the warmth of the tones that blend together in the roofscape, and then, of course, the beautiful setting that Winston has helped us with here. And we'd actually have a lot more trees in here. We left some of the trees out just so you could see other stuff there, but it would really be a beautiful, shady place. And so just summarizing that with the hotels here, and if we go ahead and exercise the option to do this instead of just having the pond up to the north. So from here then, we've gone through all of these other steps over the last 6 months. We hope maybe we're getting close to the kind of revisions that you think we need to do to fine-tune the final design guidelines, and then move it ahead for final printing and recordation for legal platting. So with that, let me, if we need to, we could touch if we have questions. Have any questions on the flood and the moving the pond and sewer pipe? Jim has this diagram, Brosovitz, that he put together. This shows the size of the pond. If we take it away from here to allow the hotel to be here, these would be parking lots. This would be the hotel. So if we move the pond here, Jim's just showing how the flood management comes. We have flood management coming here from Marketplace to here, and then we take it over across and put it back into this pond so we capture that corner site. So with that, let's see, I think that is it, unless there's other questions.
Questions from the board? Trustee Hansen?
Quick question, Carl, about the field use there. If you move the pond and you put the hotel there, were you guys able to determine what dimensions of a field you'd be able to put there?
For the soccer field?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me see, Paul, what was that standard, do you remember?
We'd asked for a 70 by, I think, 110 or 120,
70
something
by
like that.
110. We in the ballpark? I think we might even be bigger than that.
There wasn't.
I'm sorry.
We need
reminding Carl, or if you would come to
Paul,
the
you want to come up and just touch on that, because frankly, I can't remember that exact dimension right now. Probably look at it on there.
While you're looking at that, can I ask a question? What's the idea behind having a soccer field next to a hotel? That doesn't seem like a good fit to me, but
Well,
what's the thought behind that?
it's an informal play area, more for younger people, for pickup kind of soccer. It's down on a lower level. We'd have probably a band of trees that kind of put the hotel in the woods a little bit, and then looking down onto the lower area. But that was about the only area that we found we could actually have some play activity with the lawn, where we originally tried to do it in this location here, but when we got into the water management with Jim Brosovitz doing the civil engineering, there were too many requirements for temporary ponding, moving the water through, et cetera. So the best area that we found was this lower little basin that's down about 10 feet.
And I guess I think of it more as park space than soccer field space.
Well, that's different.
Yeah, that's how I interpret it.
Let Paul just touch on that.
Paul Kuhn, MIG Winston. It was never intended as a competitive sports field. It really was, I think of it more of a neighborhood park with an open turf area for, frisbee throwing, touch football, picnic type of facilities. Now, it would be very well suited as a practice facility for younger age groups. But the space that's available now, we accommodate about a 210-foot field or 220, so it's only 60 to 80 yards long, depending on how it's configured, what type of run-out areas we need and things like that. So it's a U8 field, under age group, so it's a smaller field as far as the actual dimension goes.
Okay.
But once again, it was never envisioned as a competitive facility.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
Which is typical for neighborhood parks.
Other questions from the board?
So we called it a park, that you might be able to go out and play
I can swallow that, yes.
soccer without getting arrested.
Sandy, before you go on, I just want to address what Ely was asking there. That was part of the discussion at ProStack meeting a couple meetings ago. We understand that we need more park space, and is there an opportunity to put something down in the town center there? If we're able to have pickup games or whatever it might be, keep people in town a little bit longer, they can go over to the restaurants and the retail and all that, but is there a possibility of having something that we could play on?
No, thank you, Chris. I'm okay with the park. It's just the idea of that having an organized soccer field.
It wasn't meant to be mined or anything like that.
Okay.
And we talked about festivals or art festivals with tents out there.
Not a problem.
That type of thing. Yeah, okay. Let me, if I can, let me go one more slide. Earlier meetings, there were some questions about the underpass going under McCaslin, and this at least gives us a reference to the what that looks like going under there. Some of the people weren't, I think it was even on the planning board, weren't quite as familiar with that. But Jim Brosovitz has done a little bit of investigation with some minor remedial work going under. They could actually be widened going under, but it didn't look as daunting as it did when somebody didn't know what was there. So with that, I think open it up for questions and see if there's other thoughts that you have that
So to all of you, I have to acknowledge the tremendous amount of work that went into this. It is really a beautiful project, et cetera. But I do look at every picture in here, and I'm assuming you pick them out with a purpose. And so I think the board pretty much made clear, we don't see this thing having flat roofs. Some developments have flat roofs. And on 7.3, it says, for large buildings in excess of 25,000 square feet, simple flat roofs or parapet profiles can be used, but they should include partial sloped roofs. So I'm assuming there's some construction thing in there, but the visual impact will be of a sloped roof.
Would be the slope. Yeah, and if you get into a building that was as large, well, I mean, if you took this, for instance, where Superior Liquor and that is, they have the sloped roof kind of cupolas on that. But I don't think they had a mansard type of roof. We didn't suggest a mansard, but there are ways to have some sloped roof. If, for instance, which isn't shown in this slide, but the previous slides on the Explore, the great big fitness center, that is a big building.
Right.
And there we were looking, they were talking about having dorms up on the roof, so it'd be almost like residential with some sloped roofs on top of the big box, so to speak.
So does the word sloped roof versus pitched roof, does it denote a certain type of roof, or does it just mean anything
pitched,
that has a slope?
I don't know, it's kind of semantics, but pitched would normally refer a little bit more to a slope of roof you really notice.
Uh-huh.
A sloped roof might simply be 1 inch per foot or something just to drain itself, but from the outside it would look like a flat roof because you'd have a parapet around the building. So, a good example is if we wind up finding that we can move the ice center down here, it's a little different than it is up here, because here you're more on flat ground and you're not looking down on it. If the ice center comes in this neighborhood, you're up on a hill looking, so there the roof will be very important, and it's a big roof. So there may be ways to still have it sloped, but it won't look, like a cottage. It'll be a big roof, but still to handle it appropriately. And I think we've tried to put the text in there so that you can say, how are you going to handle that roof?
Right.
I mean, we can't invent 50 ways, but there are 50 ways to, I think, satisfy what you're after.
Right. Personally, I like more pitch than slope. But I think that the tone of the board was that we don't want flat. We want variation to the roof.
I think the rendering, if you can see enough, it really, there's hardly any flat roof shown in there. This is a parking deck here that's screened, other parking areas here, but almost all of these, this is a top of a parking deck, but from McCaslin, you wouldn't notice that if it's designed properly. But almost everything else has sloped roofs, and we've also tried to, as we've talked, emphasize that most of our buildings are running east-west, and that's excellent for if they want solar. So we've optimized from the site planning point of view that you have good solar, and to do good solar, you have to have it about 53 degrees, something like that. So that does get into a pretty nice pitch.
So when, if you pull up K again, that K is where you did all the architectural precedents, that
let's see.
one graphic.
Is this, I don't have the sheet numbers on here. Is this?
I'll tell you where to stop, right there.
There you go, yeah.
So when I look at that, the right side of the top line there, I'm seeing flat roofs on those things.
No, that is, and usually in each of the presentations, I normally qualified, what we're talking about here is this building had parking on the second level. And I usually said, but it has a flat roof, which we're not talking about.
Okay.
So that's kind of a hybrid that can be a trap.
Well, I guess when said proposed developer looks at this, I want them to have a clear feel for what it is we're trying to say. So when I saw those flat roofs, I thought,
no, that's a good point.
not so much seeing it.
Maybe we should have edited that out also, but we felt that it had some character, and the fact that it did have parking on the second level with like windows, that was something.
I'll leave that to you, Carl.
No.
And then if you're looking for additional pictures in here, what I'm still not seeing is the more classic building. we talked a lot about arches.
Mm-hmm.
I see the CU thing there, sort of in the middle, or maybe that's not even CU, but
Well, that's
the more classic,
somewhere else,
I'm
arches.
still seeing a lot of mining or mountain type
University, there is some
of lines.
larger scale. Now, this is sort of classic with the
Right.
residential above sloped roof.
Right.
This is in between. This looks like flat roof, but there are some sloped roofs on that that help change it from
Right.
flat roof. So, not all of these
Yeah.
hit the mark 100%. I'll agree with that. But I think these were talking a little bit not only about materials, but kind of scale of place, that how nicely these buildings frame, like you'll often find in Europe. These are actually over here. But they really frame a space, so the space becomes the architecture, not just a building object.
Yeah.
So
I've got it because we've participated now in
Yeah.
8 or 10 meetings, but for a developer who opens this up, I'm still just a little concerned, and I'm going to leave this totally up to you. You've put plenty of work in this.
Yeah.
But if you come across some nice classic pictures that are easy to insert, I wouldn't mind seeing a few
Okay,
more.
now we'll,
I agree.
okay, I think that's still a good point.
Is it more like the...
It's like that one you showed me in your office.
This one here?
Is that the one you showed me in your office that one day?
I'm sorry, I'm pointing to
Yeah, it's more like the bottom one on the right. Well, we've got, see that, total to the right, where you've got that arch coming off of it.
Yeah, no, okay, that's nice. And by the same token, you could get after us about this one, because that's basically a flat roof parking building.
I wrote no on it on my book,
You
but
wrote
I,
what?
no. So, yeah, we're thinking alike.
We missed one.
Anyway, you get the point, but if you,
No, and each of these photos tell a little bit of a different story. I mean, I could take a half hour and walk through each one of, here's the points we're emphasizing. At first glance, obviously, not everybody would read the picture the same way, but I think those are really perceptive points, and I think as you begin to get developments coming in the final development plan, that's where you'll have time to continue to have them rework that until you feel like we're back in tone with what the principles were here.
Trustee Williams?
Are there any other thoughts?
So I ditto everything these two trustees have said, but I'm going to just throw a little monkey wrench in the whole thing. What happens if a future board would like to change the architectural guidelines?
It would be their option to do so.
Yeah?
Yeah, they would move them in the meeting.
No, I think that's, I mean, this was built upon kind of a communal citizen input. We took ideas, we had the red spots and the green spots, we tried to get as much consensus as we did. If a new council came in, new trustees came in a year, maybe sometimes every 5 years, you might say, I want to revisit the guidelines. We were unhappy with some of the things that we wound up with that we couldn't seem to defend.
Okay.
And I think there, it may be that you go through an exercise of communal input, and you might say, let's change this a little bit. So that's not out of the question. This is not cast in iron.
All right. So I assume that's not as big a deal as I thought it was in the beginning. Now I'm going to throw a little bit more of a monkey wrench in here. What if a future board decides they want to change the block configuration? Can
I
that?
don't think that's a problem. I mean, as we've said, there are a number of different ways we could have actually footprinted the town, but it was really tight. I mean, it's like a candy box, and you can only get so many pieces of candy in there. And so what we've done is tried to create a little bit of variety in the blocks, but make the blocks efficient. Now, if, like we said, let's go back. Let's just, again, go back to the ice center. If the ice center goes here, maybe that block needs to be slightly modified. If Explorer does show up, and they think that that's where the big sports center goes to tie in with their upper campus, we might say that street needs to move this way, or it needs to move that way. It's a matter of modifying the plat, saying we want to come in at a final development plan with an amended plat. And at a certain point, you'll get to a point where you say we don't have any more flexibility. But what we've tried to do is to create something that's very efficient, but as you know, we're literally within an inch of every border, and yet, if, for instance, the sports center, we said we wouldn't need this street, so you'd come in and say, we'd like to make an amendment, can we vacate that platted street, just like you do anywhere in town, and if it's not critical. Now, you don't want to cut these off, because these streets here are the outer ring streets. But there are a couple of them, this one here, possibly that one, could be modified if you had a project where you needed to move the street over, because it's a project you really want, and it doesn't screw up something else. So that's simply a matter of amending the plat, and the developer or the city could initiate it, but normally it'd be a developer, they'd make a request to do that, and if it seems logical, meets the intent, I think you make your vote.
So, Carl, I'm just going to break in, and I've said it before, I'm sure I'll say it again sometime during my career. The only thing that I know about this project, besides it's beautiful, is that anything that's going to be built is not that. So, surely streets are going to move, and street and architecture is going to be slightly different, so...
No, absolutely.
We will have maximum flexibility in doing whatever we need to do.
And that was my point was how flexible is this? Should we pass it tonight or in a month or whatever?
Yeah.
Is it flexible for future boards?
No, it is flexible, and I think it sets a vision. I mean, if you look at Belmar, they've done a very nice job in Belmar. It's the opposite of this. Very, very big blocks, almost all flat roofs, and very contemporary, kind of harsh little bit architecture. Now, that's a completely different piece of music. I think you've set a tone here of what you're talking about, of kind of a village, old but it's new type of thing, and that's part of the story. And there's flexibility within that.
Trustee Gregors, did you have a...
I guess I thought about what Trustee Williams brought up. Maybe that might speak to the voters about having continuity on this board for the next 4 years, so perhaps it's something to think about before you vote. There you go. So, there you go.
Right.
That's a political statement for the night.
15 days to see how that plays.
That's right. There you go. Trustee Farley and then Trustee Hanson.
Consistent with the questions from Trustee Williams, if we look at this depiction, and we've had questions answered about the roundabout that's on McCaslin, we have a transportation plan that we are not finished with by any means. That's working into our comprehensive plan that addresses roundabouts, and we're not finished with that subject at all. So I wanted to know how much of this PD is dependent upon that particular roundabout.
Well, we've had conversations with a whole lot of people about that, the fact that you're also studying that as a separate piece. With Alex, we've talked about how he helps coordinate these different studies together. We've emphasized you should be looking from 128 all the way to your DDI interchange, because that's one piece of road. And that here, we're simply suggesting the roundabout, because I think Farron Piers and Alex felt this actually handled traffic better than if we had a signal there. And so we spent a lot of time going back and forth and having that analyzed, and the fact that we did not have that as a full circle, that's actually the dog bone. You can't go around that one. If you do that properly, then this takes on more traffic more efficiently and safer than if we had to go back to a signal. But I think from all the way from your DDI all the way down Colton, et cetera, this should fit in with all of those other measurements and metrics. And I think the intent has been, that we've supported, is that this stretch from here over the hill to Colton, well, particularly up the hill to Rock Creek Parkway, is a speedway. It's much wider than it needs to be. We'd like to see the opposite of that it narrows down, you slow down coming into town as you go through, but that should all work with your DDI, with the intersection up here, which is the toughest. This is actually the toughest place with Marshall Road and McCaslin. But this, I think, if somebody had a better idea, could certainly look at it. But we felt urban design-wise, this has really worked. A lot of the resorts initially said, no way, Jose, and today they have 70% less accidents than what they had previously, and everybody's pretty happy. So I think that is a good placeholder. It's a double lane one, not just a single lane, so it has a little more capacity. But again, we're so tight trying to get these blocks in and getting access, and also how do we get into the Rogers property eventually, because that's the only access in from that point. If you go ahead with your underpass here, that's going to be very nice, because that'll take a little pressure off the roundabout itself. But I think Alex made a good presentation on that and really studied that along with Fair and Piers. That was about as good as we can do.
I guess the crux of the question is, if we approve the PD, are we approving it with a roundabout on McCaslin?
Well, I would say yes, but that isn't to say that if they get into a more intensive study and somebody comes back and says, wait a minute, that is not absolutely the best, that you'll revisit that. That's simply a modification. Until you pour the concrete, it's up to the board and planning board and traffic and your staff to say, this is what we think it ought to be, and at some point they're going to say, can we write a construction contract or not? But up until that point, you've got the ability to still talk. Alex would like to say, comment on that.
The traffic study that was done for this was a very preliminary one. We don't have any specific uses. We're kind of guessing on the amount of office, the amount of retail, and so forth. So when we get specific proposals in, we'll be updating that and then reviewing this. I mean, this isn't the final decision whether this can be a roundabout or a traffic signal or some other form of traffic control. So it's not like you're casting the vote for a roundabout today. We'll be updating this. We're just saying what build out of what they had. They had very intensive development, and we took very conservative uses, and the roundabout still works, and it works with the DDI. So we're pretty confident that it works. But again, you put 8, 9, 10-story buildings in there, and get a lot more intensive development, we'll have to reevaluate that. But right now, with very conservative assumptions, we feel confident it works. And I guess what we're trying to do, when we talked about traffic on McCaslin, and we're going to discourage traffic coming through town, and roundabouts is one way of doing that, by forcing traffic to travel slowly. I mean, I think they're more efficient. People will find out that they work pretty well, but we're going to try to discourage traffic from coming through town. And I think this is set up the double lane roundabout, meters enough traffic through there that it's going to keep the DDI from to perform for a very long time.
So, Trustee Williams, if it's related to this, and otherwise Trustee Hansen.
I'm good.
Okay.
It's exactly related to Trustee Sorelli's comment. Does the Town Center PD mention the transportation plan in the comp plan? Does it have any mention of it?
Say that again?
Does the Town Center PD have any mention of the transportation plan that is included in the comp plan? No. None.
Well, we were working in concert. The transportation plan shows a roundabout at this location.
Right, I understand that.
Right.
No, I get that, but if it referenced the transportation plan that we would be passing in the comp plan, then I would have a problem passing this as well, because we have not fully vetted the transportation plan. We've only seen, a portion of that.
There's not, I think we'll have plenty of time to do that, because we'll need a full traffic plan and a high detail whenever a town center actually moves forward, so.
So I just needed to clarify so I know exactly what I'm voting for and what I'm passing.
Well, also, you originally had a vision, I think we've carried through, for traffic calming on McCaslin.
Mm-hmm.
And when we read your words, what you said about the original vision for the town center and how you wanted to slow traffic down, and then we came up with the concept of roundabout. We felt that implemented that vision of traffic calming in this stretch of McCaslin.
And that's not I don't have an issue with that, whether it's a light or a roundabout or whatever it ends up being. I just want to make sure that this PD does not strictly reflect the transportation plan that we have not passed. It's all about, legalities here, what I'm actually passing.
Nancy Blackwood with us. There's nothing in the PD or in the design guidelines that references the transportation master plan portion of the comp plan.
If I can, on page 1-12, when I read this today, I did get a little concerned. It's general enough that other people may not be concerned, but it deals with, it's the last paragraph there that says, the McCaslin street edge of the town center will feature a linear green edge system with a major multi-use path framed with a double row of shade trees. The last line is, the goal is to narrow traffic lanes, to slow vehicular traffic, and provide a critical link to uses north-south and west of the town center. So it does have as a goal to narrow traffic lanes to slow vehicular traffic.
But I think the question was, does it reference the transit, does it tie you into whatever is decided in the comp plan process? And it doesn't. That's the vision for this project.
But the reason I mentioned this, Nancy, is I don't think we've ever had a board vote on that particular goal. It's been talked about a lot in a lot of different forms. What is the plural of forms? But that goal to narrow and slow a major artery, since I've been on the board, it has not been voted on as a goal. It's been stated often, so it was a red flag to me.
So can you remind me?
112.
1-12?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Page 1. Okay, thanks. And
That's my wordsmithing there, so if I got that wrong, I apologize. But the intent was, and really I think the key word there is it should have been added is visually, to create a visual friction, not necessarily the narrow roadway. It's really more just the fact of the canopy trees creating that friction for the traffic moving down the street.
Well, but in fact, a roundabout does accomplish that narrowing and slowing, and that has been often stated on this board as an objective. But I'm saying I think it's critical enough that we have to eventually adopt it formally or not adopt it formally, rather than keep stating it over where it becomes sort of the law of the land just by stating it often enough.
Right. And if we need to revise that language, we'd be happy to do that. So.
Well, obviously the comp plan has been running almost in parallel with us on this, so it was kind of a tandem type of thing, and I think in a way that's probably actually good because you're dealing with a lot of issues, and the way I would see it is that if you adopt this plan, it may inform the comp plan. It doesn't mean that it's cast in concrete. If you want to change the comp plan or even want to change this, you can do that. But I think we were trying to meet the intent of slowing traffic, making it beautiful going through there. The trees, whether the road gets a lot narrower, part of it was because we wanted to make bike lanes bigger. We were going to trade some space between bike lanes and auto lanes. But I think each plan, this is a PD by itself, and I think that can inform what you're doing on the comp plan. If there's a conflict, then that should be discussed or whatever, but I don't think you need to hold up adopting the plan, or you adopt it subject to compatibility between traffic on the comp plan and this. So I think there's a way that you can move ahead without just continuing to push ahead in front of you and still accomplish your objective. The developers know they have land to buy. If you want to fine-tune that, that can be a part of an amendment within the plan. You're not restricted to anything, actually.
I agree.
Other questions from the board? Questions or comments from the public?
I'd like to just say thank you so much for the work and the cooperation and unbelievable staff, and we think this is one of the nicest working relationships we've ever had with a town, and I think hopefully the product attests to that we got input, we tried to listen, and it's really been an exciting experience, and hopefully this is step one. You still got 100 acres up the hill and so on, plus we got to build the darn thing. So
yes, there is that detail.
And be available as a resource whenever you need help with staff.
So I have a question for the board, if I can. I was going to say, I would like to thank you for your expertise and your enthusiasm and your vision. So that's very much appreciated. So I've never felt like this is just a job for you. I feel like this is something you're really passionate about, and it's great to see that.
It's what you call a love affair.
It is indeed.
I've been fiddling around on this for 12 or 13 years. Some of you haven't been here that long. So this was an obsession. Joe has, and a couple of the others, but it's really such an important thing, and the people that see the plan, the private sector say, oh my God, this is one of the most incredible things anywhere around. So I think hopefully you're going to really get the benefits of really trying to do it right, and you can make it better, you can modify it, but this is a quantum step for town kind.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So my question for the board is, do you all have strong feelings about location of the ice rink compared to where it is right now versus moving it across into the town center? Personally, I'm just going to say, yeah, I'm very interested in having that, moving the ice into the town center. I think it's critically important. I think the hotel site is much better where it's in Plan B. So
I agree with you.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree too.
So I would, if we were to adopt that, to make sure that that's where we're at with that. And
Andrew,
Yes.
do you mean to modify, to actually put that in the graphics, not as an inset, but actually to make it primary?
yes.
Yes.
Just a thought. Number one, I think you've got flexibility to still make any decision.
Sure.
One or the other decisions. The ice center, if it can fit here so that you can approve it, then I think you may go ahead and do it, and that's a business deal, and they can get ahead with it. And I think, tonight, or was it that you've extended their lease? Yes, so that gives a little more breathing room, where that was difficult for everybody.
Although I think that where they're at right now is that they want some assurance.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have
That they can move.
that they can move someplace and they know where they're going.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's really important that we specify that this is where they're going, and that having some condition upon having these properties exchanged in some form is really important to tie that to this process somewhere that the attorney might feel appropriate.
Definitely, for me.
Okay. Trustee Williams?
I actually feel that either alternative is a good alternative. And the reason why I feel that way is whether you have the hotel on the corner, which would help the businesses that are already established there, Old Chicago, Superior Liquor, that would give them the business that they need. And if you didn't have the hotel there, you'll have the ice center, which is going to be double in size, which would definitely sustain those businesses there. So I feel either location works.
Well, I think it's, so I get that in the sort of the big picture idea, but I know that they are interested in having some assurance about where they're going.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, they can't make their business model work, and they might be moving to Erie or someplace else. So,
Am I hearing wisdom from my esteemed mayor?
well, I would strongly recommend that what we show is that the hotel is located in the inset, and that this is somehow tied to that, because otherwise, I think they're going to be looking for other places.
So you're telling us they prefer to be in the town center location rather than the other?
No, I'm telling you that
We prefer that.
I'm telling you that they want some assurance that they're going someplace, and that if you have multiple options, that doesn't give them a lot of confidence.
Well, the good news having it down here is it jumpstarts the town center.
Well, that would be that's certainly my opinion, but once again, I think it's really important, because otherwise they're at the mercy of who knows what or who.
And I don't feel, strongly either way. I'm just saying that it's, for me, not a deal killer if it can't happen the way we envision. If the hotel, cannot be on the corner and the ice rink can't be incorporated into the town center, it's not a deal breaker for me. But I'm happy to do whatever the consensus of the board is.
I mean, my understanding from the consultants is that it can work in either location. That's my understanding, and if that's true, then we should be pretty concrete about where we want them to go.
If that's what they need, then that's what we do.
And I'm in favor of that. I don't know how the board feels. I mean,
Yes,
Make
Carl,
a
sorry.
comment, please. I think that it might be a two-step thing, possibly. What I would recommend is that, if possible, you can make your preference that you think you'd like it to go there. I think there ought to be a site plan before the deal is made.
Sure.
I think there ought to be a workable site plan. It doesn't have to be all architectural design. It has to be a footprint, a function, how do they solve the parking, that you work with them on, and then you make a deal. So I'm just worried that if you prematurely do the trade, and then they say, gee, I can't quite get it to work, then you haven't gotten anywhere. So I think it could be that still could approve a plan that it could go either place, and the next step would be for them to take their preference or follow your preference and do a plan, a conceptual plan that you come back and say, yeah, it fits, we love it, it's 3 sheets, 2 sheets, 1 sheet, whatever it is, and that would give you a level of confidence that, yes, let's make the business deal and get on with it.
So I guess from my perspective, then, if that's really the case, if we're really worried that this is not going to work, that we have a condition that we're not going to approve the final site plan. I mean, we can approve all the other steps if we want to, but that it's contingent upon locating the ice rink.
And I've seen just real conceptuals. If the land exchange goes through, I know we can, the permanent ice facility will work on the south side.
Works for me.
Me too.
And can we have an update on the Minkick situation, or are you not at liberty?
Yeah, I mean, just basically what I had in the digest, that they are working on a couple issues with Dick Biella and his family, and have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow to discuss those.
So does the attorney have any particular thought about my concern or how to
Well,
proceed?
what we do is make that a condition of the approval of, for example, the final plat, I think is what we had been discussing, making that a condition of the approval, that the applicants execute that exchange agreement. And I can read a condition that we can draft to put that in there if that's what the board wants to do.
What if that falls through? Then what happens to this approval of the PD?
It doesn't, then the final plat approval never goes through.
So why would we want to do that?
It's a board decision. I think it's just a way of giving them some assurance that something's going to happen. And Trustee Pennington.
My
sorry.
concern in modifying the report as prepared by Oz to only have that option in it is that it reduces the flexibility should it fall through, and you've got the hard copy that then is going to have to perhaps be remodified to go back to the other one. So I guess I'm hearing what Carl was saying.
The great and omniscient.
Well, I guess what
that maybe leave it as it is, but have the preferred positioning for the ice rink be here.
Yeah, I think maybe I wonder if you could do a two-prong thing. I think you ought to go ahead and approve the plat.
Definitely.
And then you give a vote of confidence that you would like that deal to go through with the trade, and that would be a preferred location. And they go ahead as a business deal, and they work up a plan. And if they need to amend the plat, they come in with an amended plat. So it's not a big deal. I think you don't want to hold the whole thing up just for that. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Sure.
And that way you could always come in with their plat and modify the plat. If we had to move a street or something, then that could happen to make that work, once everybody's happy with that.
Well, excuse me, so once again, this is just my particular opinion about this, but I want to give them some assurance. I think the hotel works better on the other side. I think the hockey facility or the ice facility works better on the other side. I'm certainly being open and flexible if that can't occur. I totally get that, and I don't want to force something that can't occur, but it just seems, from my perspective, we spend a whole bunch of time, whole bunch of money, that I want to make sure I get something that I think makes sense for the town in general. So
I'm with you, Mayor. So
I think you've got a lot of support for the idea. The question is, do we need to modify the report to accomplish that? And if we do modify the report to accomplish that, should this fall through, then do we have to go back and have the report remodified? That's my concern.
From my perspective is that if you have it as Plan B there, or whatever we call the inset, if it doesn't work out, I mean, I'm 99.99% certain that would all work out fine. But yeah, we'd have to go back and modify it, but that's just a modification of the plat, so I don't have any particular concern about that. But once again...
So are we raising hands and voting on this informally, or?
Well, I mean, I guess I'd like to know where people feel about it, so... Once again, I just feel like we have an opportunity here that may be slipping through our fingers, and I don't want that to occur.
And that's why I'm in support of what you're saying.
Matt, what do you think about that? Okay, then. Wow. You told me.
I think we can always come back and amend the PD or the plat if we aren't able to work something out. The biggest, because they're not sure what site they're going to go on, they can't move forward with their final development plans. And if you leave it open until the land exchange gets done, that indecision about where they're going to go is going to remain. So
that's why.
But the fact is, without the land exchange, it can't go forward. So it is sort of one and the same. Land exchange is required for them to be...
Right, on the southern piece, correct.
So a verbal is not good enough. It needs to be
From my perspective, I've been around the block way too many times about this, that I'd like to say that a verbal agreement works. I don't believe anything anymore unless the ink is on the paper.
Yep.
So is there any way that we can, instead of putting optional hotel site plan concept in the corner there, that we can write, preferred, and the other part is the optional? Is that good enough? Will that work?
As far as certainty for the Boulder?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say no.
Yeah, because I'm sure a bank is going to want to see a document that says that something's been approved.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah. It would be ideal, that the preferred option, but I think we need to be a little bit more tight about it.
I'm wrestling with approving something that we can't deliver until something happens.
Well, it's not even in our court.
Right.
We will know shortly, though. I think, though, however, that if it's in there, there is going to be some that will support the position that something needs to happen there. So
you're basically making a statement tonight, a very definitive statement. So
I have a legal question. I'm confused. When we discussed Remington, we had this preliminary development plan that could not be modified once it was approved in terms of the consideration for the final development plan. But tonight, all this PD stuff is flexible and malleable and changeable, and I'm confused. Why is one so flexible and the other one was so rigid?
I'm not sure I understand completely the question. What were we talking about with the Remington not being able to be changed?
Right. Once the town board approved the preliminary development plan, those elements that were approved could not be changed. For example, the mayor raised the issue of actually making Williams a traffic street, and that's off the table during the final development plan consideration because it was already signed, sealed, and delivered in the preliminary development plan. So here, we're talking basically APD. I don't think it's preliminary or final, but we're being told right and left that everything can be modified. So I'm confused.
There's a little bit different situations where, one, the property owner of some of it, and also because we foresee a developer coming forward, and I believe what we foresee is a developer coming forward, modifying this, it would come back to the board,
Right.
or would be able to make a decision. But it would be the owner of the property or the developer who would want that changed, in contrast to Remington, where the
Who is the
developer didn't want it
developer?
changed.
Okay.
In other words, we are the owner of this PD, and so we
Right
can
now,
make
yes.
any modifications, thus it's very
So
flexible.
once that developer comes forward, submits a preliminary plan, that's approved,
No,
then,
they'll be coming forward with a final
or
development.
final,
Right.
then,
We won't be
okay.
able to change
Okay.
it without going through a process where they consent to it.
And that's, getting back to my point, guaranteed it's going to change, because they're going to want different building shapes and, who knows what, with the general idea that's been presented here. And I don't think there's going to be huge modifications, but, someone wants a building size of X and it's not going to quite fit in this block, we need to change it a little bit. So almost assuredly that'll happen.
So if we go ahead with your plan, and we need to change it because it did not work out, is it just a simple, put it on the consent agenda and pass it? Or is there a bigger
Public hearing.
public hearing? It's a bigger process,
It'll be,
but not like the process we've been through for the 6 months.
no, it would be the final plat.
Right. And, yeah, so you would amend the plan development and the final plan.
Right.
But you wouldn't go back through all the architectural, they're going to have their own architectural drawings and all that stuff when they come back for the final.
No, I'm talking about if we go ahead and change the plan so that we incorporate the ice center into the town center.
Right.
And that deal falls through.
Right.
And now we need to come back and amend this, flip-flop it.
Right.
That process is what I'm talking about.
Right. You would amend the plan development.
But we wouldn't have a final development plan.
No, you would amend the plan development, the PD.
Correct.
And the final plan.
And you wouldn't have a final, no final plat would have been approved because the condition was never met. So we would still
Fine.
come back
Thank
to
you.
the final.
And at the end of the
That's what we
day,
need to
the
hear.
plat's going to change anyway. We almost, maybe I'm wrong, but almost assuredly it's going to change anyway.
So Carl, don't lose any of these files, because you may just have to recall them.
So, and Mr. Worthington, I understand where you're coming from, but that's my concern, and, for the ice, which, maybe I'm making too big a deal, but I think it's a really important element in the town center.
Absolutely.
Could we come up with something
Yes.
else? I suppose so, but that's going to be very hard to find something that has that unique character in Boulder County or in the region in general.
No, I don't want to
make sure
To
that
bring a
it's
huge
happening
amount
here.
of traffic down to the town center.
Huge traffic, and it's an identity statement for the town. We're going to do some other civic uses and whatnot, but it's hard to find an element that's so important for identity. So,
I agree.
so perhaps we, once again, I don't want to be a...
Do you want to make a motion?
Yes.
Well, I want to make sure, so I'm looking at town staff. I'm happy we could either say that it's, option A, which is what's being approved tonight, and that if it doesn't work, then, inset, I'm not sure how to say that in legal form, but...
Well, I think you would make a motion to approve the PD with the condition that the hotel sites shown as the option be shown on the northern property.
Okay. And once again, I'm fully, if it doesn't work, I'm with everybody else, that, if we need to change it, I'm certainly open to that. If it doesn't work, so be it. But I think it's really important as a statement. that
Yeah, it's a
we know where
statement
it
tonight,
goes.
absolutely. Yep.
I guess I still have a question then. Are we, by doing that, telling Boulder Valley Ice that the current property they have would not be suitable for the ice unless we change this PD?
I think all we're saying is that our preference is to have it right there.
Exactly.
Our
That's what
plan
we're saying.
development is right there, that's where we want it.
Right, they might come, either
Because it seems to me they could still come forward separately for their
they could,
place on the property they have without being part of this PD at all.
Well, that property's part of the PD,
Yeah.
so let's take, for example, let's say the land exchange didn't happen for some reason, and they decided to move forward on the north property, but the board approved the PD with the hotels on that. They would come forward with their final development plan for the north property, plus an amendment to the PD, and an amendment to the final plat.
Right, well,
Unless there's a condition.
If the condition,
Then we would
yeah.
have to just approve the final plan.
I mean, why would they come forward with an amendment to the PD they didn't pass,
I think that they want to, I think the only thing they want,
that they don't own?
well, so we own, but, I think the only thing they want is some assurance about where on earth they're going.
Yes.
So just piggybacking on Joe's concern, it seems to me the cost of construction and build-out is more expensive down here in the lower site because of the roof lines and the architectural detail and all that kind of stuff. We're tying them to as part of that major defining area, as opposed to being up there where they are now. It seems to me like we're going to be less rigorous in terms of architectural detail. It looks pretty plain up in that area. To the, what direction is that, north? So by moving them down south, are we basically telling them it's going to cost another $1 million to build out? Or what are we doing to the price
In the
point?
design guidelines, there's a standard for buildings a certain size, larger buildings. So that would apply to them. But also keep in mind that they would still have retail office in front of their building along Main Street, and then office or retail to the west of them, and then the same thing, residential or office retail to the east of them. So they're kind of wrapped in office and retail
I
and
got you.
residential. Their building is,
So they can sort of still build a functional
Right, yeah.
thing in the middle
But
of
there's
that
still
all.
standards in the design guidelines for the building as well, so they're going to have architectural elements that they'll have to abide by, no matter if they're on the north property or the south property.
Matt, the site that they end up getting, though, that's going to dictate the size that they're going to build, right? I mean, they're not going to build the same exact site whether they're in the north or the south.
Yeah, probably on the north side, it would get a little smaller.
Smaller, right.
Yeah.
So theoretically, they would spend more, but they need to know that when they get their financing.
And they've done those calculations for
And
both sites.
Even if this swap doesn't go through as it stands now, that doesn't mean that Boulder Valley Ice can't go on the south. There's other options out there, maybe not as preferable to us, but there's still options that they could end up there anyway, if that deal doesn't go through as it is now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
if a master developer stepped forward tomorrow, great, then we'd be dealing with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And back to Sandy's point earlier, that if they were to move to the south there, that springboards everything. It really gets things started there. And I think it also makes it more appealing to explore, and perhaps maybe makes it easier for Explore too. So our preference is clearly there in the south, so I say that we do the plan development to reflect that.
Yep.
Okay. So, what would your recommended motion be, so somebody, if they're interested, could make that?
So rather than put just a condition on the final plat resolution, you also want to put it on the plan development? Is that?
I guess, I mean, however, if you want, we could approve this with, I'm not sure, once again, we're going to get some.
With what I was suggesting is you just approve the PD with that change. And then if you want to put a condition on the final plat, we can do that.
That's, I mean, however the board wants to proceed. If we want to put it on the plan development with the change, I think what Matt said earlier, a motion to approve the final development, the plan development, with Plan B being the preferred alternative.
Great.
Or however you would like to say that, that's fine. And then if you want to also make it an actual condition of approval of the final plat, I have some language for that as well.
I think I'm okay that if we identify it on the plat, on the plan, that's okay. I mean, I don't want to really get involved in a business transaction, but I just, if we're stating what our vision is for the property, I think it's really important that we state that that's what our vision is, if I understand where the board is.
So you're saying that we don't need to include it in the final plat?
I think that if we change the PD to reflect that, then I'm okay with however it's passed.
Which means we would not be changing the PD or the final plat based on what we have in our packet, correct?
That would be, I think it's not necessary then.
Is that because the final plat is deemed to be that which is approved in the first motion?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, and then from my perspective, once again, the plats, no matter what's going where, they're all going to, it's all going to change, no matter what happens.
All right, Jim Brosvich.
Fly in ointment now.
I have seen a concept for what Boulder Valley Ice would propose to do in the southwest corner of the site, and it would change the plat as it is today because a portion of this street here.
Sorry, just if you could be at the mic, we can get you a pointer.
There's a pointer.
Jim, that's a final, I've seen 3 or 4 different, so I don't think, unless the board wants to hear it, I think the final plat as it is good.
Fine for potential amendment later.
Right.
Yeah, it would have to be amended.
It'll be amended.
It will be amended, one way or the other.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's inevitable
Well
to be
taken.
amended?
Yes.
Okay.
So can we make a motion, or?
That would be my recommendation.
Okay.
Trustee Gregos?
Would like to make a motion? Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you close the public hearing?
Oh, yes, excellent. I forgot because I didn't open it, I sort of lost track of where I was. So, yes, public hearing's closed, and now board action.
Yeah, and before we make a motion, I guess you should ask if anybody has any other conditions. I don't think there were any. Planning Commission had a condition.
Just the technical stuff.
What was that?
Did we hear from the public?
We asked for public input and didn't get any.
They had, another condition was about addressing the underpass, the current underpass with lines or something like that. I don't know if that's necessary for this or not.
I think it's a little too much detail at the moment.
Okay, that's fine with me.
So I would like to make a motion to approve Town of Superior Ordinance Number O-3, Series 2012, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a plan development zone district plan for the Superior Town Center property in case number PD/ZDP-2012-1.
With
And the language.
With the change that Plan B is identified in the plan development plan, zone district plan, be the preferred alternative.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Become the primary plan.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, I'm sorry, become the primary plan, not be a preferred alternative. Become
Right.
the actual plan.
Correct.
Thank you for stating that. So motion by Trustee Gregos. Is there a second? Trustee Williams, further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you once again to Carl and the whole team. So it's really a great process, and I echo, I think, what all the board members said. So
But you still got more work.
We got one more to go.
two more things.
We have 2 more to go.
Yep.
Do you want to do it, Chris?
I've got the last one pulled up.
Yeah, the last one, okay.
Sure, I'll do.
Okay, Trustee Williams.
I'd like to make a motion for the Town of Superior Resolution Number R-65, Series 2012, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving the final plat
The preliminary.
for the Superior Town Center.
The preliminary plat.
Okay,
You're in the last one.
I'm in the wrong one. A preliminary plat for the Town of Superior property in case number SUB-FP-
No, you're in the wrong one. You're in the wrong one.
Where is that?
It's
Page 185.
185.
Trustee Gregos, or I can do it.
Yeah, why don't you finish that? Sorry about that.
Okay, let's start again. I'd like to propose resolution, Town of Superior Resolution Number R-65, Series 2012, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving the preliminary plats for the Superior Town Center case number SUB-PP-2012-1.
Motion by trustee Gregorio, second by trustee Williams. Further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Got one more?
I got it up.
Trustee Hanson?
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number R-66, Series 2012, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving the final plat for the Superior Town Center property in case number sub-FP 2012-2.
Motion by trustee Hanson, second by trustee Williams. Further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Great. So we have the idea, and now, let's see, next 6 months, town staff will deliver us a development proposal. Oh, okay. All right. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
That brings us to item number 9, public hearing and approval of the 2013 budgets and the final approval of an ordinance and adoption of resolutions. With that, I'd like to open the public hearing. And Phyllis, you have proof of publication?
I do. I have 5. I have for the town, SMD 2 and 3, Superior McCaskill Interchange Metropolitan District, Superior Urban Renewal Authority, and Superior Metropolitan District.
Great, thanks. Mr. Magley?
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we have a final approval and adoption of ordinance and 4 resolutions for fiscal year 2013 town budget. Paul Mills, the Finance Director, has a summary highlight of the budget that he's going to go over with the board, and then we'll open it up for discussion and questions and consideration.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Magley. Thank you, Mayor, Paul Mills, town staff. Before you this evening in your various capacities is a culmination of work that's been going on behind the scenes for the last 6 months. Staff began this process essentially in May, formulated a draft budget by the end of July, submitted that to the board for their particular review. On 4 separate instances, the Finance Committee, as well as additional board members, conducted a quite thorough review of the budget, all open public meetings as part of the review. And what we have here tonight is culmination of those particular efforts. I didn't want to take too much time, but I wanted to provide some highlights of what we have in the budget, and I'm going to essentially commingle the many hats you're wearing. You'll be approving town budgets and SMD1 budgets, but from an overall perspective, highlights include a total operating or total budget of roughly $40 million. Obviously, I think people have a tendency to forget, but we're a full-service municipality, and as such, we have quite a few varied operations and expensive operations. As it relates to maybe where we want to start on a taxing perspective, the board is very cognizant, especially as it relates to property tax, to try to stabilize or mitigate or actually reduce that particular taxing stream. So in this particular budget, we actually are showing 3 tax rates that you have control over: the general fund property tax, as well as the Superior Metropolitan District number 3 property tax and the Interchange District property tax are all proposing to decrease. The general fund property tax, this will be essentially a 10% rate reduction we've seen in that property tax levy since 2007. And as well, the District 2 and District 3 property taxes have gone down over 20% since those districts have been dissolved in 2003 by the board, and this will be the first year we see actually a decrease in the interchange property tax of roughly 20%. So I think through the oversight of the board and collaborative efforts between board and staff, we continue to provide quality services, if not enhance level of services, and continue to be very cognizant of maintaining, if not decreasing, property tax revenues. Having said that, a reminder to folks that most of the revenues that fund general governmental operations are sales tax revenues. We are not unique in that aspect. Roughly 6% of our daily operations are funded by sales tax revenues.
Some of our operations, our capital operation, our open space operation, are funded close to 100% with open space, with sales tax revenues. Very cyclical revenues, we did experience a downtick over the last several years, but for 2013, we're actually looking at somewhat of an inflationary increase in those sales tax revenues at roughly 2.5%. So just a reminder there of how important that is, but at the same time, how variable that particular revenue source and how diligent the board as well as staff is in maintaining our existing sales tax base and at times further enhancing that base. It's absolutely critical for our ongoing operations. We have no changes in what we call governmental fees for this particular budget cycle. For our 5-year planning horizon, as the board is aware of, we are looking at a material fee change in 2014, that being an increase in what we call our vendor fee, the remittance fee back to vendors who collect and remit sales tax revenue to the state of Colorado. We're looking at actually an increase of that fee, which may be counterintuitive, but it will actually decrease revenues that come to the town by the order of magnitude of about $100,000 a year. That's an item we'll revisit, obviously, in next year's budget cycle, but just a reminder of what we're looking at there. On the utility side of life, we look at our utilities as private businesses. And as I think the dialogue that the board heard earlier this evening, and the mayor, I think, noted this as well, these private businesses are not self-sustaining. So, for example, in the 2013 budget, we're supporting our utility operation to the order of magnitude of about $2 million. Over the 5-year plan, roughly $8 million in sales and use tax revenues are going to support that particular utility operation. So as such, we're trying to mitigate this as much as possible, but from a fiduciary standpoint, we need to try to work towards those utilities to be self-sustaining businesses. So we are looking this year at a 5% water and sewer rate increase. It'll affect what we call an average customer to the order of magnitude of about $3 to $4 a month. We're looking at similar increases for the 5-year horizon as well. One modification to that is the board years ago implemented a policy where our original town sewer rates mirror the city of Louisville rates, and those rate increases are projected in 2013 at a 4% rate increase instead of the 5% rate increase. Additionally, we're looking at one-time connection fees to our utility system to increase by 4% in this fiscal year, as well as in the 5-year plan as well. Briefly, I'd like to talk about some enhancements that the board has elected to include in their particular budget. We are looking in 2013 at continuing efforts for opposition of the Jefferson Parkway, and we have material revenues or budgets associated with that particular work. We're going to increase our economic development consulting work by 100% from $30,000 a year to $60,000 a year. We are looking at enhancements to our public safety level of service by essentially enhancing our number of deputies from 8 to 9. Currently, we have hourly deputy support of roughly 850 hours a year to support primarily our traffic operations. In the dialogue between the manager and the Boulder County Sheriff and our police sergeant Chamberlain, we've proposed, and the board initially has agreed to enhance that level of service to include additional time at the school zones during drop-off and pickup time, as well as enhanced traffic enforcement services. To get to that particular level, we are eliminating the 850 hours of hourly support and replacing that with a new deputy. We are also looking at the addition of one new staff member, a public works director position. We're at a time now with our utility infrastructure and our streets infrastructure is valued at roughly $150 million. It's a material infrastructure investment that we've made over the decades here in town. That infrastructure obviously is beginning to age, and we have material capital expenses associated with maintaining those infrastructure items. And as the infrastructure ages and the capital operations become more intensive, staff feels very, very strongly that we need continuing oversight of those particular maintenance operations, not only capital maintenance, but ongoing maintenance with the addition of this public works director position. We are proposing 100% participation in what's called Excel's WindSource program. WindSource is a voluntary green energy program where Excel will produce local energy on top of their mandated renewable energy goals. And these additional resources are available for municipalities to purchase. We have participated partially in this program, essentially with purchasing wind source power for 3 of our facilities, primarily, or most predominantly the wastewater treatment plant as well as town hall and the bungalow. What we're proposing in next year's budget is 100% participation in the program, and actually what is going to happen, the wind source energy program, the cost to participate in that program is changing. It's going down from a little over 2 cents a kilowatt hour to 1 cent a kilowatt hour. So our participation in the program now is costing us $42,000 a year. Will decrease to $31,000 a year, but essentially all our facilities now will be participating in that particular program. As I mentioned, as it relates to our existing infrastructure, that's obviously first priority for the board and for staff, maintaining our existing infrastructure. And this year's budget, or 2013 budget, is focused on that. We're looking at many transportation, road, and trail maintenance type of programs to meet that particular goal. Some of those highlights include roughly $900,000 spent over a 5-year program for trail maintenance and additional trail connections. We're looking at roughly a $10 million street maintenance program over the 5-year period, focused in 2013 and 2014 at finishing up the residential road rehabilitation projects. So for the next 2 years, we're focusing $2.5 million a year on those particular programs. Somewhat less in the out years, but it's a very, very material and needed expense, based predominantly because of some of the soil conditions around here. We're looking at improvements within the interchange district. Most predominantly is our work collaboratively with the City of Louisville, RTD, and some state funds to begin improvements on the interchange. We're looking at roughly a $12 to $13 million diverging diamond interchange project. Additionally, we look at connectivity issues within the interchange district. We're looking at a underpass underneath the chasm that ultimately will connect the Superior Marketplace to the town center, as well as additional transportation improvements, including potentially a triple left going from Marshall to northbound McCaslin. Thank you. And the only other maintenance projects associated with our Parks and Recs facilities, but the only additional material capital project I wanted to note was the continued investment in our open space, and we have over $5 million budget in 2013 for open space expansion. And the only other maintenance focus I wanted to focus on, obviously, were our water and wastewater treatment plants, where over essentially the 5-year period, we're looking at a $4 million investment in some of those facilities. And it was mentioned earlier in the meeting, some of those improvements are just routine maintenance improvements, some are federally mandated improvements that, unfortunately,
What was the number you just said?
$4 million over a period of 5 years for those particular capital projects. And within those particular projects, as well as any other projects, staff is constantly diligent at looking at alternative funding sources. We found those for the interchange. We found them for parks projects. We've gotten grants for other utility-related projects, and staff will continue to focus on that, those type of funding sources. So with that, Mr. Magley, unless I left anything out, that was the brief summary I wanted to present to the board.
So perhaps you could add in there the cost of any water firming project that we might have to participate in.
Mayor, actually, that may be a good project, which in fact I left out. So the town continues to partner with roughly 12 other participants for the firming of our Windy Gap water shares. What that project means is collaboratively there is planned to be built a water storage vessel immediately west of Carter Reservoir, roughly 90,000 acre feet. The town's participation in that project is essentially buying 4,500 acre feet of storage at a cost of roughly $15 million. So where the collaborative group is going through final federal approvals, we've received some state approvals. We're tentatively planning on design of that particular project beginning next year, with construction starting in 2013. The majority of that project we have funding for, but we would need to look at, we have in the budget plan roughly $6.5 million funding to complete our share of that $15 million project. Thank you for that reminder.
Yep. Thank you. Questions from the board? Questions from the public regarding any of this? So I think I can share everybody's opinion up here on the board about how thankful we are about the diligent work you do in the finance department and town staff in general. It's a pleasure to work with everybody. It's to get to George's point here, though, we have a lot, between $14 million worth of Windy Gap storage and the multiple $1 million worth of money that we have to pour into the water utility district. Unfortunately, these rates are going to just have to go up. Hopefully, with time, and if the town center develops, that won't be an issue so much anymore, and that we'll be able to stabilize either the water rates and or property tax. But for right now, we need to balance the budget, and I think that's the only way that we're going to have that happen. So, yeah, Trustee Surley.
I received a call from a member of the public that could not be here tonight.
Okay.
And that person expressed a desire that we not act on the budget tonight and that we postpone that until after election in case there were new trustees that should have a fair look at the budget. I personally am sympathetic with that request, but by the same token, given all of the preparations that we've gone through up to this time to get to this point in time with the budget, I'm not sure I could see how that could be feasibly done in a timely way. I'm very sympathetic to that request, and if there are new trustees, that would take over. This has always been the system, and I don't know how to avoid this problem. And I think it would cause greater problems to try to wait and not have a budget. That's just my personal viewpoint, but if somebody feels differently, then I'm more than happy to figure out a way to wait.
So I understand that perspective. I think, as you said, it's not, I just can't see how it would be possible to get through. I mean, we just spent multiple months trying to get through this and trying to do that within a few weeks. I just can't see how that's possible. That being said, we're not going to spend any money or do anything until the rubber meets the road, and they could certainly change the budget if they wanted to, or amend the budget as however they felt needed if there was board support for it. So
that's a good point.
Other board comments or questions or concerns? Otherwise, I'll close the public hearing.
I agree. I received the same phone call, Joe, and I was conflicted as well. But the reality is that we only have 3 meetings left until the end of the year. And for a new board member, if they were to come in and to try to go through the budget, it's not feasible. It's just, it's impossible.
Months of work. You've all spent time down here.
It wouldn't be fair to a new board member to have to go through all this and get caught up, and for us to cut it so close to the end of the year. I just think
And the
it's
mayor's
not.
point's a good one. I mean, this is a 2013 budget, so no money's
We have to vote on
until
that.
January 1st comes around, it's going to be spent on that. And if a newly elected trustee went through the budget and had certain aspects that he wanted to try, or he or she wanted to try to get changed, he would have to work with the rest of the board to try to amend the budget. But,
So I can.
Unless there's any other questions or concerns, I'll close the public hearing, and yes, I'll entertain any motion that anybody would like to proceed with. Trustee Hanson?
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number R-67. Series 2012, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior levying general property taxes for the year 2013, right?
And is there a second?
Yes.
Trustee Gregorius, my only comment is that we have been consistently lowering property tax rates. We have the opportunity to tax, I think, at 12 some odd mills, and I think the board should be congratulated. I don't usually like to pat ourselves on the back, but to continue to decrease the tax rate to 7.93 plus the library. So I think it's good work on everybody's part. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Do we have, we're not spending money.
Yeah, we're collecting it. So that motion carries. Is there anybody you'd like to, Trustee Gregos?
I would like to make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution number R-68,
68.
Series 2012, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior adopting a budget for the Town of Superior for the calendar year beginning on the first day of January 2013 and ending on the last day of December 2013.
Motion by Trustee Gregos. Is there a second? Trustee Hanson?
Discussion.
Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
There is. So I have a couple things in here that, I'm a minority on, and I will not be voting for the budget part of this. I feel that there was a couple of things that we did not resolve. One, and maybe I'm all by myself over here, but one of those issues was the community center / rec center. I feel that a feasibility study is kind of the cart before the horse. In fact, we have no idea if the majority of the town actually wants a community center / rec center. And I sort of feel that that is the first step before we reach a feasibility study. And so I realize that would be coming forward for a vote at $50,000, and I would definitely be voting that down. But this is part of why I don't want that in the budget. I think that we're not there yet with the feasibility study. We really just need to determine if the entire or the majority of the community wants that. And I think that was great that a small group came forward with a great plan, totally support some of their ideas, but I can't just leap that far into a feasibility study with 50 grand. So I can see getting there, but I can't see taking that first step. So that's one thing. The other thing is there was an RCAC budget of $95,000, and each one of those were going to be evaluated as to whether they were a project that was, worthy for the town, that has good participation and is worth the money spent. And I haven't seen anything on that. And so usually with the RCAC budget, we never see anything come forward on the board. We never vote on anything that the RCAC budget or the RCAC committee actually, brings forth. It just gets implemented. And so I was hoping to get that information before we made a choice to support it in the budget. So that's another issue for me. So I will not be voting for the budget because I don't think we're there yet. I think there was a few things that we kind of just dropped to the wayside and didn't discuss.
Mr. Magley?
Thank you, Mayor. So I hear what you're saying on the Recreation Community Center. That is in the budget because it was part of the board's 2012 goals. One of their action items was to specifically have this study in the 2013 budget, so that's why we included it.
And
but
I'm
going to come back for approval. And then
But does that study potentially include outreach to the community to get their input to see if they want to get this or
I
not?
don't think it's jumping too far ahead, personally. I think it's finding out.
Well, but the point is that it does have to follow a process, and we did talk in that goal-setting session. You do have to start with the horse and then get to the cart. And the horse is determining whether or not this community as a whole has the appetite for this entire thing. So I hope this is budget shorthand, that when it says feasibility study, that in fact it intends to start. I hope when the proposal comes before the board, it includes that method of surveying first, waiting for results, and then based on those results, it goes to the feasibility study to implement something with those preferences.
Yeah, I see.
But when will have input at that point, though?
Town Line Park, when Greenplay came in, did the whole outreach to the community, and then went forward with the costs and all that kind of stuff.
And, several of us did say we would expect this to be a hard copy survey that goes out to the broad community, that doesn't rely on just 100 responding to that monkey thing on the Survey Monkey on the website. That this goes out, we get a statistically significant sampling in return, and all along the way, the proper methodology is followed.
But the board can guide that when it comes up.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with you, and I think,
Yeah.
I agree with Deb, too. I think we need to make this what we want it to be, and let's find out, and then see if what we find out can be done, if there is something to be done.
And I completely agree with what everybody said.
Yeah, I think voting for this budget doesn't mean that you don't have that opportunity to discuss, or for the whole board to discuss it at the time when it comes up.
For that particular issue, you're correct.
Yes, for that particular, yeah.
Right, the RCAG.
No, I'd like to hear more about that.
So on the waste diversion line item within the budget, we have been working diligently to try to get information from the surrounding municipalities, which is one of the things the board wanted to see, and put together a summary of the last 5 years of costs and participation levels and those things. And we just simply do not have it ready to go for tonight. However, I will say that we will be giving you that information before, as soon as possible.
And presumably that'll be part of the RCAC work plan that we will end up approving one way or the other.
Right, and the committee hasn't had a chance to see this information that we've been putting together as well, which I wanted them to get the opportunity to do. So I apologize that it wasn't ready for tonight, but you will see it, and you will have a chance to provide input and comment on it as well.
Is there a way to pass this and have an exception?
I don't think I'd be changing line items, but I think that we can 100% guarantee that everything that was discussed tonight is going to happen. I mean, I can't imagine the manager won't make that come to fruition, so. Trustee Pennington?
Well, I guess the concern has been expressed numerous times now that how budget money gets allocated to the specific initiatives of an advisory committee. And this one does seem to, I don't know if it's just because of history or whatever, it seems to be perpetuated in the wrong sequence. And I'm hearing what Deborah's saying, and I do believe that every project that comes forth has to be basically zero-based at some point. Not everyone, but a lot of them, and all of our CACs. They have to stand on their own and be deemed successful, and the board has to agree to continue them. And this sort of comes by in this lump thing, all of them together, et cetera, and we're never seeing that.
The approved budget tonight doesn't automatically mean the money's spent January 1st, 2013. So as you get this information, if there's specific programs within that line item that the board doesn't feel are continue to be valid programs, then we, would work with RCAC and.
So when does that work plan come
That never seems to happen
forward?
though for some reason.
I'd like to clarify that, RCAC also needs to evaluate these programs.
Right.
We need their input, because that's why they're an advisory committee, that we need their input. And
completely.
we haven't received, two components of this. So for me, that's a deal breaker for me. I'm not going to vote for the budget part.
Conversely, they could also come back and say, yeah, these have, we might be convinced that, yeah, these have been very good programs, and we actually need to spend more money on it. So I'm not.
You're right, but we're not there yet.
But when do we get that information? I mean, I agree with Deborah on this one. Is there a way to pass this resolution and have that be pulled up? I mean, is there a way to do that?
I would really hesitate to start changing line items within the budget.
What's the cost
Well,
of each
the
of
only
those
one.
projects on average? Is
It's
it
one line item, it's not 100 line items.
Deb, what's the total line item?
Well, the total is 95,000, but each one is, there's 4,700, 2,000, 4,000,
So-
2,500, 3,000, I mean,
That's how
Theoretically,
they've gotten in.
all those projects could be paid for at the manager's discretion. So,
But they're going to have a work plan that we approve.
Right.
Because we're not going to be doing anything unless we approve the
Just
plan.
to remind of the discussion, the fact is, the question came forth when we've got to be involved in policy decisions. It really is not necessarily the $4,700 spent, but it is a policy decision whether or not we participate in Wash It Down program, right? This town needs, we as a board have that responsibility to say, okay, let's listen to the presentation, we like that, we feel that we should participate as a town. And I think some of those decisions have been made at the committee level in the past, so we've got to fix a little bit of stuff there.
I agree with you, but I certainly wouldn't want to hold up approving a budget or not voting on a budget because of $90,000
No, I'm not suggesting that.
programs
Yeah.
that we haven't had a thorough discussion on as a current board. A lot of those have happened in the past with past boards.
And as I see it,
Go around.
I see it here, all these resolutions and ordinances, I'm going to pass every one of them except for this one.
So, we need to proceed forward, but, so when would the town manager be able to deliver some of the information about this, would you say?
And when will our RCAC deliver the information too?
Right.
Well, they're held up, they're held up because
Well,
of
first I
the
can
town,
say,
and that town is held
I
up.
can assure the board that if you're uncomfortable with this line, no money will be spent in 2013 until you've had a chance to review it.
Okay, that's good enough for me. Okay.
And we will, again, apologize we didn't have it for you tonight, but we will have it for you as soon as we have completed the information collection and given the committee a chance to review that information.
As long as that's on the record, I'm good.
No. And, you know, what I was going to say is that if we zero it out, that basically means, thanks for applying for the committee, but you don't really have anything to do. So, come back and do a budget. We could change the budget in the future, but I'm not sure that's where I'd like to go.
I'm satisfied as well with what
Yeah,
Matt
it's on the
said.
record.
If it's coming before us and we've got the ability to look at it, I'm fine with that.
Will it be coming as the whole package, or will it be coming as piecemeal?
No, we'll bring it to you, all the information in the whole package, but it'll be broken out per program
And when will that occur?
as soon as. I don't remember when the RCAC's next meeting is, but as soon as that meeting occurs, I'm looking at Paul, he has no idea, I don't know why I'm looking at Paul, but.
My guess is that you're going to have it easily before January, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, we will?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Well, I think that we have new members
Yes,
that
we do.
are getting on RCAC, and we should give them an opportunity to chime in with the rest of the group.
We've got a current member.
I think we have a member as we speak.
Yeah, so,
I just really want to, I'm sorry, I didn't mean.
well, it's just that we close the public hearing.
It wasn't even
so-
public comment, I just wanted to answer your question, is that we were waiting till this next meeting when you guys have done this to be able to bring our proposal
Okay.
forward, so it'll be quick. That's all.
So just as a reminder, there's a motion has been made.
Yes, there is a motion.
Discussion, the motion's on the table.
So, all in favor?
No, somebody needs to second the motion.
We did second
We
it.
did second
Who
it.
did?
I did.
No.
Okay, I didn't.
Nobody.
Well, there's a motion and a second, that's why we got to the discussion point.
Yeah.
So otherwise, we wouldn't have been at the, just...
I did. Yeah. And then I said, and
Do you
discussion.
have all the, so Phyllis, if you don't have it, then we need to...
I didn't have a
No,
second.
nobody seconded that I heard, I'm telling you.
I did.
Yeah.
Well, otherwise, I wouldn't have opened it for discussion, but...
Yeah, that's right.
Did you?
Whatever.
Trustee Williams seconded it. Okay, we had the discussion.
It's on the
All right.
down.
All in favor? So, Hanson, Cirelli, Muckle, Gregorus, Pennington, opposed? Williams. Thank you, that carries. Anybody want to proceed?
Sure.
Trustee Williams?
I'd like to make a motion for the Town of Superior Resolution number R-69. 69, Series 2012, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving fees for 2013.
There's a motion by trustee Williams, second by trustee Sorelli. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Next.
I'd like to make a motion for the Town of Superior ordinance number 0-4, Series 2012, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior appropriating sums of money to the various funds and spending agencies in the amounts and for the purposes as set forth below for the Town of Superior, Colorado for the 2013 budget year.
Motion by trustee Williams, is there a second? Trustee Sorelli, discussion? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Next.
Would like to make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution number R-70, Series 2012, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a budget and levying the debt service property taxes for Superior Metropolitan Districts number 2 and 3 for the year 2013.
Motion by trustee Gross, is there a second? Trustee Williams, discussion? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Next.
Go ahead. I'd like to make a motion for the Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District Resolution number SMID 5, Series 2012, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Superior/McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District adopting a budget, levying general property taxes and appropriating sums of money in the amounts and for the purposes as set forth below for the year 2013.
Motion by Director Williams, second by Director Gross. Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. I'd like to make a motion, Superior Urban Renewal Authority Resolution number SURA-3, Series 2012, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Superior Urban Renewal Authority adopting a budget and appropriating sums of money in the amounts and for the purposes as set forth below for the Superior Urban Renewal Authority for the 2013 budget year. Motion by Commissioner Hanson, second by Commissioner Williams. Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
Would like to make a motion to approve Superior Metropolitan District number 1, Resolution SMD number 1-9, Series 2012, a resolution of the Board of Directors of Superior Metropolitan District 1 adopting a budget and appropriating sums of money in the amounts and for the purposes as set forth below for the Superior Metropolitan District number 1 for the 2013 budget year.
Motion by Director Gross, second by Director Williams. Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion for the Superior Metropolitan District number 1, resolution number SMD number 1-10, Series 2012, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Superior Metropolitan District number 1 amending the district's rules and regulations by adoption of a new Appendix A to the rules and regulations.
Motion by Director Williams. Is there a second? Director Hanson. Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. I think that's it. I have all my information here. So with that, thank you once again to everybody involved in building the budget. Really appreciate it. And if there's interest in moving into executive session, I'll entertain a motion for that.
Great job, town staff.
Chris made a motion, I'll second it.
So for to go into executive session to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, develop strategy for negotiations, and/or instruct negotiators pursuant to CRS 24-6-42.4.E regarding land acquisition, and to consider personnel matters pursuant to CRS 24-6-42.4.F. With that, all in favor? Unanimous. We're in executive session. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming down.
Thank you.